4,000,000 years ago, on the planet Earth, two brothers started watching Transformers media, and now they are going to make it your problem. Hi, I'm Hayden.
And I'm less tired than the first time we recorded this.
This is round 2, but welcome back to BroBots in Disguise, where we are going through and discussing every episode of every major Transformers cartoon.
Welcome back to Season 2 of BroBots in Disguise, where we are discussing Season 2 of the original Transformers animated series, released in 1985 and largely following the episode order of Season 2 on TF Wiki with a few minor adjustments for continuity. In today's episode,
Hey, can I get 25? Can I get 30?
Hey, can I get Generation Y? Can I get Beast Wars? Can I get Beast Wars 2? Can I get Beast Wars 3? Beast Wars Neo? Beast Wars...
Listen, we promise we're not trying to speedrun this episode. It's just that we're very familiar with the material. This is our second round, and we are large and in charge and here to bring you the episode and bring it to you with good audio quality this time. So,
You know who else thought they were large and in charge? Omega Supreme.
He did.
Because in today's episodes, the giant Omega Supreme risks the Earth for revenge in The Secret of Omega Supreme. Transformers risk being toys for giant children in Child's Play. Smokescreen risks his friend's autonomy in The Gambler. And Megatron risks the fate of electricity to make a Pokemon in Kremzeek! Looks like we're taking big chances this episode.
Taking some very, very big chances. A lot of big stuff.
Alright, you wanna run through this one, or shall I do
At the time of this recording, these Transformers episodes are available on the Hasbro Pulse YouTube channel, as well as on DVD and several other streaming services such as Tubo and Pluti. Tubi and Pluto. In case you want to follow along with us, we're kind of going through these, assuming that you have some knowledge of the episode. But give it a watch. It's good. It's fun.
And you can listen to our podcast here on YouTube or here on Spotify or wherever you're listening to it. Maybe you're bootlegging our episode. I don't care.
That'd be great. We're getting listens.
Yeah.
If somebody's willing to go to the effort of bootlegging our podcast, then they're a super fan, and I applaud them.
We're always happy that you guys are listening to us. Why don't you let us know in the comments what keeps you coming back?
The ability to bootleg our podcast. That's what keeps them coming back.
Speaking of bootlegs, these episodes have some rough animation, but we'll talk more about, and we acknowledge that these are kind of rough episodes, but we'll talk more about that when we get to the animation errors section.
Yeah.
But for now, let's go ahead and get started on our episodes.
So, Secret of Omega Supreme. So, Optimus commands Omega Supreme to tell him his tragic backstory, revealing that he was once friends with the Constructicons before they betrayed him. Meanwhile, the Constructicons are mining an asteroid, unleashing a space beast on San Francisco. Omega's blind quest for revenge almost allows the beasts to destroy the city.
Bum, bum, bum. I remember you really liked this episode as a kid.
Yes, there's a multitude of reasons why, I think, but the biggest one is that I am a huge sucker for the archetype of the large, like, burly, tortured, quiet, bruiser sort of archetype.
Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah, where he's just a big dude.
Sorry, excuse me. Conan the Cimmerian or Cimmerian?
Cimmerian, I
think most people say Cimmerian, but...
Because I believe it's an alliteration to Sumeria.
Yes, but also it's with a C, and it would alliterate great with Conan if it was
Conan the Cimmerian.
Yeah. Anyway.
But, yes, Omega Supreme is very big, he's very quiet, he's very,
he also
reserved.
Has the best lines ever.
He's got some of the best one-liners. And he's, good at kicking butt as well. Yeah. Sometimes. When he needs to be.
He's got a revenge story in this one.
Yes. Tragic backstory.
You always liked revenge stories.
I always liked revenge stories. I don't know why. Nobody ever did anything to me worthy of revenge. I think I just liked the straightforward and simplistic storyline to it. That it's simple. You have an objective. Get revenge. But then also, revenge bad. And you think about that. And that makes you think, doesn't it?
Boy, this episode makes us think.
Oh, yes.
You want to run through our first couple of notes first, and then we'll get into...
Yes. So the first thing that it makes me think is that the Constructicons, the first shot of this is like the Constructicons going up into space to get this asteroid. Number one, very funky looking asteroid. It's just flat on the top. And then it looks literally looks like a floating island.
yeah. It's just chopped off. Makes me wonder if there's like a second half of it somewhere else in the solar system.
Another space beast twins.
Yeah.
And yeah, for a very funkily shaped asteroid, they also have a very funkily shaped rocket where it's like. It's like those Sharpie markers that have a Sharpie on either end, where it's like the thin end and then the big end, but it's like it has a rocket on either end.
I mean, that kind of makes sense for what they need it for.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does kind of look funny.
It's a hyper-specific
and that is like an
tool.
actual thing, like in, well, sci-fi, I guess, more than... I mean, yeah, you got retro rockets in some real-world spaceships too, but, you know... Retro rockets, they're a thing.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, the ship does look kind of funny.
Yes. Yeah, something that caught my eye is that Optimus says that Omega Supreme is the only Autobot other than Cosmos who can fly into space. And I don't remember if this is actually true or not. The only other person who I think was previously been able to fly into space is... Our fan favorite, stuck in legal limbo, Skyfire.
Yeah, he's the only one into space because Skyfire's his pilot license got revoked because by Super Dimension Fortress Macross.
Exactly. It's like we would get Skyfire, but he's in the middle of his court battle. But yeah, and. Then later in the episode, Teletran 1 very emphatically declares that only Omega Supreme can stop the space creature. So, yeah, this episode does a lot of heavy lifting to showcase to us, even though we've already kind of seen it in previous episodes, showcase to us that Omega is the man. He is the man for the job.
I even like how he's kind of got like a space helmet where, you know how like astronauts have that like, what do you call it? The little hood thing that they wear.
Yes, it's like the cap.
The cap that they wear over their head. That's like kind of tight around their
Yeah,
head.
it keeps.
He kind of has that
from...
too underneath his, and he has that face shield that goes over him.
And then when it's like the faraway shots where it's just his visor and it's opaque, he kind of looks like he's got the gold sunscreen visor that astronauts have.
It's a good design.
It's a good design. I think his he's a little bit gimmicky in at least, you know, his design as far as the transformation is concerned. But, you know, that's a nitpick on my part.
But another thing that I like about Omega Supreme in this episode is the build-up to him, where he's kind of like this giant or this hermit that they have to summon each time they want to use him. Like, Optimus drives way out into the woods, and he's like, Omega, where are you at? You know?
Yeah.
And he just, like, appears out of nowhere. You know?
He's similar to... He feels like an autonomous agent, similar to, the Dinobots, where... They work together, but they are technically distinct entities.
Right. Like he is
an Autobot. Yeah.
Even though Optimus like kind of presides over all Autobots, he also specifically presides over the Arc Autobots, and Omega Supreme being
too big
to fit in the Arc. He's not technically an Arc Autobot. And we'll talk about this a little later. Also, you know, he definitely showed up later on. Like, he did not come with them on the Arc. Usually in episodes that we've seen him in prior to this, he functions more like an outpost or a base or an extension of the Arc compound.
Yeah.
Like, you know how
he's
Ratchet
always like
that little...
either parked right out front or he's like really far away.
Yeah. Like in Golden Lagoon, he's kind of like an outpost that they retreat to before they go to the Ark.
Yeah.
You know? Like he's a halfway point or something like that, you know. Which makes sense since he turns into, you know, he's the first sort of base transformer.
Yeah.
Prior to, you know, like Metroplex or Fort Max or something like that.
Right.
Did you know the Combiners have base modes that they just never showed that in the cartoon.
The Combiners, as in like the Constructicons?
Not the Constructicons, the Scramble City Combiners.
Ah,
they actually
okay.
have the main body part, like Silverbolt or Onslaught
Yes.
or whatever. They have a third mode that never shows up in anything that you can attach to the bigger bases like Metroplex and stuff.
Interesting.
In the original stuff.
Unique
Kind of,
that they
yeah.
haven't really built into the idea of like build your own city sort of thing with a bunch of different like city-sized combiners and having like a whole line of them.
Well, that'd be cool. Like each one, yeah. They kind of did that with the Micromasters.
Yes.
In like the late '80s, early '90s, the Micromaster series came with several bases that could transform. Like this one's a gas station. Oh no, it's a missile deck.
Right.
Or whatever. And those, I think you could connect all of those. And they brought that back for the recent War for Cybertron trilogy.
Oh, cool.
With some bases that you could I think it was characters that turned into mini bases that you could connect to the new was it Titan's Return or was it War for Cybertron? Anyway, one of the recent toy lines, they did that, and you can combine them and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yes, I do really like that Omega is like a hermit on the mountain
Yes.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he's just this wise dude who lives in a cave, and they have to like go summon him
Right.
into battle sort of thing. But yeah, Optimus like plops him down and it's like, why are you so specifically mad at the Constructicons?
I think it's funny that he actually he literally orders him like, this is a command, you have to, and then he tells him like, just talk like a normal robot, and then he does.
Yeah.
Like,
he's like,
in
I
this
choose
episode,
to.
Yeah, in this episode, it's kind of implied that he has brain damage, and that's why he.
Yeah, there is a.
But then he can just turn it off.
Yeah, I think it's. You could kind of interpret it as he only interprets things as direct orders or not direct orders.
Yeah.
And that he adjusts accordingly based on whether or not it's an order.
Yeah.
So if Optimus says, tell me your backstory, and he says no, and then he says, that's an order, then like his whole brain, the way that he perceives that issue is now fundamentally restructured to like a programming yes-no sort of thing.
Right.
Of like, okay, I've been ordered to. So
Yeah. Which
yeah.
kind of we'll talk about it a little bit more, but that's going to play into the discussion of his relationship to the other Guardian robots.
Yes.
Speaking of robots, who's that dorky robot doctor in his flashback? Is he a transformer or is he just a drone?
Well, that's the curious thing. He doesn't have any parts to him.
He doesn't have any kibble.
He doesn't have any kibble.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any identifying things.
Yeah.
And timeline-wise, we're not exactly sure where this falls as far as like Quintesson relation to Transformers and where
I've
they're
got some
at.
notes on that for when this flashback is.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, let's kick off with the flashback. So
Yeah.
why does Omega have so much beef with the Constructicons? And it's a lot of different reasons, but mainly the story that he tells is that he is a Guardian robot, which is not exactly defined in this episode, but for the purposes of his backstory, it's a group of abnormally large, like giant-sized transformers, or at least robot sentinels sort of thing. It's unclear whether or not he's unique amongst them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
they're appointed as guardians over various different parts of Cybertron, like important areas.
Right. And his is Crystal City, which
Yes.
sounds like a bunch of cicadas.
Yes.
But I think it's funny that the Transformers are so obsessed with crystals that they built a city out of them.
Yeah. We got the ruby
Although-
crystals of Burma. We got the green energy crystals of the Earth's core. We've got corlonium crystals. And now we have Crystal City.
Yeah. Which it looks more like one big building than an actual city.
Yeah. It's unclear what exactly makes it important, but they do mention that it's the most beautiful city on all of Cybertron. So it seems more like it's a national treasure.
Yeah, it's like it's definitely like a public monument or like a some sort of important art installation sort of thing.
And
right?
in later instances of lore when it shows up, it is like a scientific and artistic cultural center to Cybertron.
Like in the Align continuity or something.
Yeah, it's where like the most advanced scientific research happens, and I don't know why Crystal City specific the Crystal City, that's where all the science stuff happens. But I believe they made that lore is that Shockwave studied there, and he helped create the compound that's like a really hyper dense material that's a crystal that the city is made out of. And then when he got expelled for various crimes against the Geneva Convention and general, ethics, returned in force with Bruticus and decimated it. But that was in the Align continuity.
That's in the Align continuity.
Comes way later.
And that has echoes to things that happens in this episode,
yes,
but it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
In here, the Constructicons are said to have, or Megatron implies that the Constructicons built this city.
Yes, I believe
it's built this city. We built this city out of crystals.
We built this city on generational trauma and betrayal.
But it seemed to me more like they were just there to kind of like fix something, like maintenance guys or something.
Yes, but I believe Omega at one point says that they did build the city.
Right.
But
yeah. Maybe
yeah.
So. But that's the main like irony is that they end up destroying it.
Yeah, and that does track with what they've what has been on display in previous episodes and like say the Master Builders and everything is that they were builders on Cybertron. Yes. They were peers to people like Grapple. Grapple was apparently on another level to where he could, he was extremely well respected. He was the top in his field.
Yes.
But it is cool to see that, like, yes, the Constructicons did build stuff on Cybertron.
Which, if they worked on Crystal City, either constructing it or maintaining it, that implies that, and we inferred that they never worked with Grapple before the Master Builders, right?
Right.
That implies that Grapple did not have any hand in building Crystal City.
True. What could he have built that was even better than Crystal City?
Right. Also, I just assume that Crystal City's been around for a long time.
Yeah. I see.
This would be like...
I think this is more of like an antique, like, going to something like...
This would be like
Lincoln
the Taj
Memorial.
Mahal.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or the Hagia Sophia, the Hagia Sophia.
Yeah. I can see this being... Because, again, when we see the interior of this, it's nothing special. There's no crystals. There's no nothing. It's just the same Cybertronian hallways that we've always seen.
That'll kind of come into a complaint I'll have in errors.
Yeah.
But, all right.
Revised Constructicon lore.
Yeah. Let's. If you were afraid we weren't going to address this, let's go ahead and address this. The Constructicons. This should be counted as an animation error or continuity error, but they're in their Earth modes on Cybertron. However, these flashbacks may be being presented from the point of view of Optimus Prime's imagination, and if he's
like visualizing it
as Omega's telling it, exactly. And if he never met them on Cybertron, then he may not have known that what they looked like then, before, and he just imagines them in their Earth modes. Or Omega Supreme is so mechanical now, he can only think of them as they are currently now, their Earth modes being a symbol of the betrayal he suffered from them.
They might not have even been green and purple at that time.
Right. But I don't think he has met them yet in the show on Earth. Maybe in Golden Lagoon, but it's kind of hard to tell because it's just kind of hard to tell who's who in that episode. Yeah, he wasn't
really... I think the Constructicons were mostly at the lagoon itself, and Omega never was.
Well, no, he comes out of the lagoon, remember?
Oh, yeah, he does. Okay.
How he fit? I don't know, but yeah. Ha! I bet that wasn't the inconsistency you were expecting me to address, was it? No, of course. All right. Even bigger than that. Let's talk about how this episode launched 1,000 head scratches.
Heavy Metal War.
Heavy Metal War. Megatron says, "We built them in these caves.
We built these bots. We built them with a box of scraps."
Megatron says, yeah. However, they existing on Cybertron in this episode seemingly contradicts that statement before their first appearance.
And we had the running theory of, like, maybe they were in the same camp as, like, the Combaticons, where their brain chips were removed from their original bodies and then rebuilt.
Yeah, they were rebuilt in this cave.
Their brain was in the chip. Their old bodies are dead. They had new bodies built by Megatron, and then the chips were plugged into those new bodies, sort of thing.
Right. But with new information from this episode, we need to redo the theory a little bit. It seems that the Constructicons fled Cybertron separately, according to what Omega Supreme tells us. It seems the Constructicons fled Cybertron separately from the Decepticons, and then Omega Supreme chased them. So they would have arrived, they came to Earth to meet up with Megatron sometime before Heavy Metal War.
Yeah.
And this would have been after they reawoke from Earth. So maybe Megatron sent out a signal, said, "Hey, Constructicons, come meet us on Earth," you know.
Right.
Then they came to Earth, and then what I think happened after that to explain this discrepancy is Omega Supreme caught up with them, destroyed them completely when they got to Earth, and that's why we don't see him actively pursuing his vendetta before this point. And you know,
he kind of didn't realize that
during
they had been rebuilt.
season 1, like, let's say either during the Ultimate Doom, while Megatron's shipping energy to Cybertron, maybe that's when he says, "Hey, Constructicons, come here." They come to Earth. Then Omega Supreme jumps off of Cybertron, lands on Earth, destroys the Constructicons, and then I don't think that's actually what happened. I think really sometime after the Autobots left and the Decepticons chased them, then the Constructicons left. Omega Supreme chased them around the cosmos. Cybertron went to Earth. The Constructicons went to Earth.
Yeah.
Omega Supreme went to Earth, destroyed them. Then he's hiding out as a hermit for the rest of season 1 until we see him in... Is it Blaster Blues? I think it's the first time we see him in season 2. And that's when they find out, hey, Omega Supreme's been hanging out on Earth.
Yeah. What are you doing here?
That's what I think has... so anyway, he destroys them prior to Heavy Metal War. And then Megatron rebuilds them in the caves with a box of scraps. And that's how both could be true at the same time. And it's a cartoon to sell toys from the 80s. It doesn't really matter, people.
It doesn't have to make sense, but we would like for it to make sense.
It's just fun to theorize.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of fun. That's what we're here for, is having fun.
Yes.
Now, this does not explain why they are building Megatron in the 5 Faces of Darkness when they haven't yet been robo-smashed in this episode.
Which also, robo-smashing.
yeah, we'll put a pin in that. There seems to be more of them, if I remember. I haven't watched that episode in a while, but if I remember, in 5 Faces of Darkness, there's way more of them. So it's possible that Constructicon is simply a class of Transformer, similar to Omega Supreme being a Guardian robot, and just that this group was evil, while the group in the group that built Megatron was evil, while the group in this episode was not yet evil. Or maybe they were secretly evil all along. I mean, Omega Supreme doesn't see them get robo-smashed, so he could just be an unreliable narrator.
And it's already been established that his perception of things may or may not be warped in some way.
Right, exactly. And, not everything a fictional character says should be taken as fact. And that goes for building them in the caves also.
Yeah.
We have such a habit of just assuming that everything a fictional character says about lore is true.
Exactly.
And it's much more interesting to assume that characters can be wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
Let that ambiguity hover a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe Megatron didn't say they built them in you know, and like we said last episode about, was it Hook saying we're going to reconvert this batch? Maybe it's just a slip of the tongue.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Constructicons do mention the Robo Smasher, but they only mention Omega Supreme being smashed.
Yeah.
I need to stop saying that because
day.
it's starting to sound weird.
Robo Smasher.
Yeah, anyway.
But I do like this kind of narrative thread that the Constructicons have of being builders and then being turned into either they only build weapons
Yeah.
and devices that will ensure destruction, or they destroy.
Yeah.
I love that like contrast there of that they were once great and they still have the potential to be great, but they're just actively choosing to be bad.
Yeah.
Or are they? Are they being forced to be bad? This episode throws that into question.
Yes, let's talk about the Robo Smasher. Is it reprogramming, mind control, personality destabilizer? Is this a forerunner to the forehead tentacles? And then Omega Supreme can apparently just reprogram people also?
So yeah, like with the reprogramming, it's an ability that we've only seen directly attached to Megatron in some capacity.
Yeah,
it's always like, you know, the tentacles and the chest tentacle, the head tentacle, whatever. Something to do with the tentacle that's attached to Megatron specifically, either as a magic slidey hand tech or something that he's directly involved with. This is the first time we've seen it in a device, but it's kind of assumed that this is a device that Megatron himself worked on.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, probably handmade sort of thing.
Right.
So it is within reason to say that it is like a direct extension of him. This did bring up an interesting concept, or question, I guess, is that with things like Torque 3, where he reprograms him, he says he reprograms him with his own personality.
Yeah.
And then Torque 3 isn't quite Megatron.
Yeah, he's not just a clone of Megatron.
Yeah. It's not like you see Megatron's face in the Torque 3 screen, and then it's a distinct entity that is operating with like the beliefs and megalomania that Megatron has. Not exactly like the same memories or the same personality and stuff. So it's curious to see that, like, you know, the only time that we've seen someone else get robo smashed fully on screen is some rando. And his design is pretty interesting. He looks like a reject from he looks like Alpha Trion's cousin.
Yeah, with Optimus's colors and kind of the body from what's the planet that gets destroyed at the beginning of the movie?
Yeah, Lithone.
Yeah, he kind of looks.
And maybe
like
a tiny bit of Junkion.
Yeah, a little bit of Junkion. Yeah. He's probably just reused from like some discarded stuff from the movie.
Bits and bobs. But when he shows up and gets robo smashed, we don't know anything about his personality before that. The only thing that we get is, I exist to serve. Yeah. Only you, Lord Megatron. We don't see the Constructicons get hit.
It's like a complete brainwashing.
Yes. But at the same time, how iterative is that brainwashing? How much of their own personality is left? How much of their own free will is left after that? Yeah. And Optimus says that he used this thing to swell the Decepticon ranks as well.
Yeah. And he also says that Megatron's reprogramming cannot be undone.
Right. But Omega, when he tries to do it, it's assumed that he's doing it with the assumption that it's like, I can normally do this. Like, normally reprogram people.
And it kind of calls back to when Red Alert was spazzing out and Hoist and Inferno wanted to fix his circuits.
Yeah.
But it's not quite the same thing, because that was like a that was more analogous to like a hardware malfunction, whereas this is a software thing.
Right. And all of this kind of ties thematically to, I think, what this episode is trying to say about, like, head trauma, I guess.
Yeah.
But
But also just trauma, like,
Yeah.
you know, traumatized.
Right. Omega is a traumatized character.
Yeah.
He's operating out of trauma, sort of thing.
Right.
But all of this in context with a lot of other times that we've seen Megatron reprogram people, and then also in iterations beyond Generation 1 with stuff like Beast Machines.
Yeah, Energon.
Energon with, like, forced reprogramming.
Yeah. I feel like there's a little bit of that in the live-action movies, too.
Yeah.
I can't remember,
But, yeah, it is a theme that...
Oh, and in animated, where he's kind of, like, creating things in the lab, where he's just a head.
And even stuff like, you know, the Allspark.
And the Dark Energon in Prime.
Yes.
Is kind of a externalization of that, too.
So, all of this kind of ties together of, like, I think there's a...
Oh, maybe that's what... Maybe the evil Constructicons were like doing a ritual to create Megatron. Like they all had the Megatron virus in them, and by building this guy, they put it all into him.
Yeah, that's a
ooh.
concept that I think
it really helps. Kind of seeing him as a virus, something that has existed for a long time, coalesced into one being, kind of adds that sort of almost demonic bent that some of the anime have with him.
Yes, I think there's
especially Galaxy Force, but like
there's a unexplored, but also it's a not overtly explored, but it is still a very widely explored concept of Megatron not necessarily being an individual, but more of a viral idea.
Yeah,
he's a entity. He's a force of will that forces himself into the minds of others and forces them to do his bidding as like you said, either a virus or some sort of demonic force.
right. And that's more prevalent in the ones where he's more of the
Dark Lord,
a megalomaniac, Dark Lord, scheming, hardcore pure evil villain, right?
This one he's despotic warlord.
Nowadays he's much more sort of this political leader, and the lost brother and the tragic character.
Yes.
And then creating that opportunity for him to be redeemed, which I think kind of which is kind of ironic because it's like, the idea of Megatron being redeemed and becoming an Autobot in a lot of like IDW and what's the new one, the Earthspark. The idea of that is kind of funny to me because it's like, people like this character, let's make him into a good guy and redeem him. No, the reason people like him is because he's an evil megalomaniac.
Yes.
So you take that away from him, he's not so much Megatron.
Right. I do think
he's Egatron.
I don't know. Egatron. I don't know. I think
you do Megatron, then he evolves into Galvatron, and then so you take away the evil from him, so he's just Egatron. I don't know.
Sure.
I'm sorry. This episode's about Omega Supreme. Let's get back onto him.
But I do think before we leave that topic, I do think it's a good progression of Megatron. Mm-hmm. It's moving the idea of war and how Transformers approaches that concept into a new territory. Yeah. It doesn't have to be the end-all be-all territory.
No,
it is unique
absolutely.
To see Megatron as a less than evil and more of like a morally neutral to good sort of personality.
We've talked about it before. Transformers is very iterative. It has a lot of different versions of itself, and it's very neat to see them do different things.
And I think it does play to...
I just think it's ironic.
Yeah. It plays to his strength as a character in that you can interpret him as a redeemed villain, and he's still Megatron, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's speaks a lot to his character. But in here, he's very much just a consistently evil guy.
And that's what we like him for.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be deep.
But, such as the Robo Smasher. It's not that deep. It's just a device that brainwashes people.
Yeah. It creates a lot of interesting lore questions, ethical questions, and just really plays into the whole thing about them being robots, and that alienness that, it doesn't one-to-one line up with people.
Right.
But if I had to line it up with something, I'd say that it's like immediate and sped up political brainwashing.
Right.
Because
again, it also brings up the question of how much of the Constructicons' free will was involved in their betrayal of Omega Supreme.
Yeah.
And how much of it was just like, live to serve, this sort of thing.
Right,
or was it like, okay, now my polarity's been shifted.
Yeah. Which is why it makes me think of the personality destabilizer.
Right. We've also seen this crop up in
different
different ways.
Because it's still them. They're just evil now.
Yeah.
Right?
But, yeah, I do really like the tragedy of this whole storyline with, the Constructicons. They were friends with Omega.
Yeah.
They got brainwashed, and now they're acting outside of their own will, and the consistent betrayal of Omega, where he's like, I tried to reprogram them. I genuinely thought that they were good now.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
It's that trying to reconcile with somebody that hurt you.
Yeah, and then they come back. Also, they come back with the Devastator form, which is stated to be given to them by Megatron.
Right.
They weren't originally a combiner.
Right. Which further makes me think that maybe that's Constructicon is just a class of Transformer.
Yeah.
It's like or cast of Transformer, or I don't know, whatever you'd call it.
Yeah. They're blue collar.
A working group of a type of Transformer.
Yeah, which would make sense why they'd never. They always have that repressed desire to build something grand, like Grapple.
Right.
Grapple's an architect. He's an artist. They're more involved in like the nitty gritty building and engineering side of it. Of like, how do we actually make this thing work?
Right.
Which is, it still tracks with what, like they could still build Crystal City. They just weren't like the grand architects of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the irony that we already talked about it, of them, destroying things now,
they're Constructicons, but they destroy.
Incredible, just built into them that they are... The incredible idea, whoever came up with that, to take the construction group and turn them into Devastator, like that.
I love that contrast.
The contrast, just they build things and then they destroy things.
You can even read that into some other combiners, like Bruticus, where they're Combaticons, they're tacticians of war, they're really smart and like a cohesive military squad. When they combine, they're Bruticus. They're just brute force. It's war in violence incarnate, sort of thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool naming and theming that you can do with combiner forms. The combined
form being the antithesis of the team.
Right. Or the epitome of the team.
Right. Like, also, I mean, I feel like, the Combaticons especially get more, that's their... They make the plans as the team, and then they combine to execute the plan as, brute force.
Yeah, and like Protectobots, they are all first responders, and then they become Defensor. They are the ultimate shield, sort of thing.
He literally has a force field. I guess that's why Trailbreaker doesn't show up again.
We don't need him anymore.
Yeah. Anyway,
you can retire.
We'll talk about them when we get to them.
Exactly.
But for now...
you want to talk about a space dragon?
Let's finish the flashback first.
Okay.
Capital City is mentioned. It is not named, but in the Marvel...
Assumed to be Iacon.
Yeah, in the Marvel Comics, we already had Iacon, so it's safe to assume that this is Iacon that Omega Supreme walks to.
Yeah.
But it brings into question, when is this flashback in comparison to War Dawn? Because it seems like it's at the end of the Golden Age. Things are fading from gold to bronze and gray. Yeah. Like we talked about it last episode. Electrum. We theorized that Electrum coated Cybertron to make it gold, and then it naturally fades eventually. Yeah. And at this point, it is
endlessly funny that it's a literal golden age.
Right. And so, but in this episode, there is like an eternal sunset vibe to it.
Yeah, it's always
and
dusk.
Everything, yeah, it's always dusk, and then like everything's kind of a bronzish, and then when it gets destroyed, it's gray. You know, it's leaning towards the dead husk that we see it later on. You know?
I love seeing that visual progression of the decay and ruination of Cybertron.
And then Optimus mentions that he has heard of key events. The reason I'm comparing this to War Dawn is because it seems that the war has not quite started yet in War Dawn, and that Megatron, you know, because Orion Pax still kind of idolizes Megatron, and he hasn't like openly declared war at that point.
It might not have gotten globally to that point.
Right. But in here, it seems like they mention the capital city's under attack from Decepticons. I know the Constructicons have the Decepticon logo, but that's that. We already talked about that.
Branding.
Optimus mentions he has heard of key events. It's interesting to try to track how much he knows personally versus what's just common knowledge. Like, did he have some friends that were Robo-Smash too, or did he just, you know... and so the Decepticons are mentioned, but it's not known if the war is fully going or if it's just starting at this point.
Yeah.
But considering that it's in this dusk, I would guess that the war is going, just not here. You know?
Yeah.
This is sort of like Omega Supreme's like guarding Crystal City in case it gets attacked by Decepticons.
Right.
And Megatron is swelling his group with the Robo Smasher, but this is where the Robo Smasher gets smashed and destroyed. So presumably, since Megatron never does anything twice,
he's like, it didn't work once, it's not worth it.
It's easy to assume that he's already swelled the Decepticon ranks. So I would say that this happens after War Dawn, but before Cybertron has been completely destroyed, obviously. You know, this is somewhere like in the middle, either the early stages or the middle of the war.
Yeah, because I can definitely see it being like, you know, that conflict has been going on over there, but it hasn't reached here yet, sort of thing.
Right. And as we said, real quick, Omega Supreme seems to have suffered some robo damage.
Some robo-smashing damage.
Some brain damage.
Smashing!
Yeah. But I want to also call into question his sentience to begin with, because, like, we've talked about drones before. Alpha Trion mentions drones in War Dawn. I recently watched that episode.
We don't know if the medic guy
the medic may be a drone himself.
Yeah.
Similar to the Buzz Lightyear guy in Desertion of the Dinobots.
Right. It's some level of personality, but not necessarily fully a Cybertronian.
Right. Which Transformers have developed the ability to transform by this point, clearly, obviously, you know. So that's not the dividing line of sentient. I don't think that's the dividing line of sentient and non-sentient, but it does seem like most of the drones can't transform.
Right.
Because I theorize that since Alpha Trion's so old and we never see him transform, he just doesn't transform in G1.
Yeah.
He's had a plethora of alt modes in later toys, but I don't think in the G1 cartoon he can transform.
Yeah,
because we never see him transform. But anyway, and he was created before the Transformers could transform.
Right.
Right? You know?
He's just too old to transform.
As revealed in the Five Faces of Darkness. But... yeah, that's also a thing. Emirate Zaron says that he hasn't, in the Marvel comics, he says that, I haven't transformed in so long that it might break me if I try it. I think that's pretty funny. But Omega Supreme, his sentient level, he seems to be different than the other Guardian robots that we see in later episodes like War Dawn and...
the one with A3.
Yeah, the one with A3, Forever is a Long Time Coming, I think. Where they are kind of wider, they're a little... fat, you know.
Yeah,
they're also blue,
rounded shapes.
They're also blue. They never transform, and they don't talk.
Yeah.
And apparently they can operate without a head.
Yeah, they have like a different heads. They don't have a face. It's just
no,
like...
they do have a face.
They do?
Yeah, it's just a very blank expression version of Omega Supreme.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if, and we discussed this in the first take of this episode, if Omega Supreme is a Guardian robot that was then programmed with life from Vector Sigma, because
Yeah.
in other versions it's either Allspark or Primus creates the living sentient Transformers. Because the Dinobots are kind of sentient, right? They're
Yeah.
not just drones, and they can transform, but it seems to be that a truly living Cybertronian is programmed from Vector Sigma, right? So maybe that's the difference between drones and...
You could even see it as, like, the Guardian robot is like basically like an exosuit or something that a regular Autobot or, Cybertronian gets programmed into. Like, similar to the Constructicon, or the Combaticons having their personality chips removed and then placed into a different body. You could see it as like it was a Cybertronian placed into a Guardian robot's body.
That's an interesting idea. That kind of goes with like something that I never played with but could have in Energon is Omega Supreme is a headmaster.
Yes, and also there's a lot of like kind of mech-ish concepts in like that Unicron trilogy of things that are not necessarily, they're either a transformer and they turn into like a power-up for somebody, or
like Overload.
Yeah, or someone like not Landmine. What's his name? Is it Landmine? In Energon.
Yeah, Landmine and Bulkhead have that like
it's like a exo arm thing.
Yeah. Right.
So it could theoretically be a Cybertronian in sort of an exosuit of some kind.
I suppose, but I feel like Omega Supreme is the whole
Yes,
thing.
he's the whole thing.
Here's the thing. His name's Omega Supreme. So maybe he is the last and the greatest of the Guardian robot.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is that he was like the greatest crowning achievement of the Guardian robot, like, quote-unquote, program.
Right.
And then, as the war went on, more and more of them died out. So that he was the last one, and is also the only one who was ever sentient, sort of thing.
Right, could be. Alternatively, him always talking in,
robotic phrasing,
objective, destroy, or whatever, right? It makes him seem more like a drone. However, apparently he didn't always talk that way, and it's implied that that's, part of the brain damage from the Robo Smasher blowing up on top of his head. But he can just turn it off when Optimus asks him to, which, to be fair, I would prefer him to just narrate the way he does rather than,
betrayal, hurt.
Yeah. That would have been
emotional
a very
damage.
that would have been a very awkward narration for this flashback thing. However, it does make him seem like an edgelord that he can just turn it on and off. He's choosing to just talk that way, you know?
But I think it is like kind of, you could read it as he's talking that way because it's an easy way to close himself off emotionally from the traumatic events.
Yeah, of course.
And then when Optimus confronts him about it, he's like, okay, I guess I better... Oh gosh, this is going to stink, but I guess I gotta talk like a normal person sort of thing. It's questionable whether how much of it is trauma, like it's something that he physically is forced into, as far as like a speaking pattern and a thinking pattern, or how much of it is a active coping mechanism.
Right.
It's probably a mix of both as well, but it is implied that like they directly say that the damage caused by the Robo Smasher being destroyed halfway through the process of him being turned evil is that it prevented him from feeling any emotion other than blinding rage whenever he sees the Constructicons specifically. All other times he's just cold, emotionless logic and orders and computing sort of thing.
Because at the end of the episode, Optimus does say something like, maybe you're on the road to recovery, maybe one day you'll be able to feel again.
And then he's like, maybe.
Which I like the cyclical story that he gets a second chance to defend a city.
Yes. With the giant space creature.
Yeah.
Space dragon.
Space dragon. Crab lobster thing.
Yes.
It's got like pincher arms and like a whole bunch of legs, and I kind of like the design. It's weird, it's dorky, but I also really like it.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's design-wise, the aesthetic is very similar to like a Quintesson sort of design style, with like the kind of techno-organic sort of look.
Kind of like the Dweller or something like that.
Yeah, where it's like these like rounded shapes. It's all metal, but it's all these like organic shapes and stuff. Right. Which I really like. It's a unique visual design. It is kind of stupid looking, but
like, are those horns or those eyes or what's going on there?
I like them as eye stalks because then it seems like it's a weird snail thing.
You know what it looks like? It looks like a Bionicle.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Something that could exist in there.
Which also, you were talking about the robot guardians, or guardian robots being exosuits, and all I could think of was the Exotoa.
Exactly.
How they can function on their own, but you put a Toa in them, and then they be
even more powerful.
Except they suck, because they literally drain your elemental energy to function, or something like that.
It's so weird.
We should do another podcast on Bionicle.
Yeah, there's like... It's weird that you'd think that this would culminate in some sort of, like, massive confrontation with the Constructicons.
Yeah.
But not really. It's more of just Omega kind of chasing after them. Optimus shows up and is like, no. And he's like, okay. And then he goes after the dragon. But it is neat that there's... You know, it's revenge bad, but it's also... a good storyline about don't let the mistakes of the past repeat themselves, and also define who you are.
Right.
Which I like. Well, not even the mistakes, but like the pain and trauma of the past.
Right.
And, you know, even though he doesn't really seem to have any sort of attachment to San Francisco as a city, it's the idea of this is an important city, similar to Crystal City.
Right.
And it's gonna get destroyed if we let things go crazy.
Right.
And are you gonna let your revenge get in the way of saving this place?
Right.
And even if it's not a direct analog of like your that's redemption sort of thing,
right,
it's still the sentiment of, well, I get to protect a city again,
right,
sort of thing. So
yeah,
I think
it would have. I think it would have worked better if he had connections to some of the people living in San Francisco. Like if Optimus had sent him to guard San Francisco for some reason.
Yeah.
Or that's where he was stationed at the beginning, instead of just hanging out in the woods or something. Like
right.
if he was
it should be his duty to protect San Francisco.
Right.
His appointed duty.
Yeah.
Which it's implied by the fact that, you know, he's part of the Autobots. They protect everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's just Earth in general, and
yeah.
it happened to be San Francisco that the dragon landed on.
Right. A lot of what this episode is like, you get a choice to decide how much the pain that you've suffered.
Yeah.
Unjustly, and it is like, you know, Omega is a victim.
Yeah.
But you get the active choice of whether or not to let that define you, or to move past that and take steps to grow beyond that.
Yeah.
And again, that's all like in the end of the episode with him, you know, recognizing that like there is a chance that I can eventually get to the point where I'm more emotional and am more open, and it's not something that we really see in the show. We never actually see that like fully fulfilled. He's always the robotic dude.
Right.
For most of his time in the show.
Yeah. He's in season 3 a little bit.
A little bit. But he's just kind of business as usual. Omega Supreme. Throwing out one-liners.
Right. It's one of those things when it's, you know, it's like Batman, you know, like, you want him, for character growth, you want him to grow past his trauma and to, you know, to heal and stuff like that. But once he does, he's no longer Batman.
Yeah.
Right? You know, I am darkness, I'm the night, da-da-da-da-da, right? You know,
right.
If he heals from that, then he's just man.
Yeah.
Right?
A man.
So, you know, if Omega Supreme healed, then he would no talk like this. Or he would, you know, talk no longer jank.
Yeah.
Sarcasm appreciated.
Yeah. I think, like, it's the difference between... There's, like, 3 different things that are totally distinct from each other on a writing scale. There's characterization, character development, and character growth.
Right.
Characterization is just showing you...
And they all hate each other.
Yes. Characterization is just, this is what this character is like.
Yeah.
We get, like, insight into them. Yeah. Character development is showing, like, this is this character confronting a thing and then overcoming that thing.
Right.
Have they changed? Maybe not necessarily. Did they learn something? Definitely.
Yeah.
Character growth is this character is actively changing and the choices that they make are changes that will reflect in later installations. That's something like, you know, let's say Invincible.
Yeah.
The show Invincible. Rexplode is a character who grows over the course of the show. He starts off as the worst. He's a jerk.
Yeah.
Insufferable. By the end of the show, he's a well-adjusted, still pretty egotistical, but well-adjusted and content individual. So, I think that that's where this episode is at with Omega Supreme. This is character development.
Yeah.
He learns, and there's the potential for character growth. We just never see it.
Right.
And that's okay. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that's true. It's like what I said about fictional characters don't always have to be right. Fictional characters also don't always have to end well.
Yeah.
They don't always have to have a conclusion because people don't always have a conclusion.
Yeah.
Right? You know, that's... We want to grow ourselves, and we want to heal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always happen, because life is weird.
Yeah. And also...
Stuff happens.
Right. And also, you may start that path, and you may take forever to get down that path.
Also, goals. A lot of times, goals change as you grow. And your people are always changing, you know?
Yeah.
So, like...
And maybe
you don't always achieve what you initially set out to do, and that's okay. Sometimes.
Right. Sometimes.
Also, I like Cosmos sneaking around.
One of the best scenes in this entire episode is Cosmos failing his stealth rolls. Sneaking up to get a sample of the ore, and then... Oop! Again! Cosmos is the best. Every single time he shows up, he's the best character. I love him so much.
Yeah. Oh, one last thing. Can robots cry?
They can glisten.
I like the artistic gleam in his eye.
Yeah,
like,
they can get misty-eyed.
It's not quite crying, you know, because it'd be like, you know, if he's leaking lubricants, that might actually be malfunction, right? You know?
Right.
So it could just be the sun glinting off of reflecting off of his eye and the way his face shield is,
right?
You know, just making it look like he's tearing up.
Yeah.
But it conveys the emotion. It's actually kind of an artistic little thing to do at the end of it.
It's like, I see what you did there, episode. Like that, you did a cool thing.
Or maybe he is crying, and maybe Transformers can cry.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, something that would be more in the, like, Transformers Prime or something, where, or animated, where they're a little more on the, not organic side, but kind of...
malleable, cartoony side.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But anyway.
Yeah. How much humanity can you read into it?
This is an ambitious episode.
Yes.
I just wish that the production values kept up with it. Because, oh my goodness, is it jank. We'll talk about that in the animation errors.
Yes, but I think this episode has so much going on in it. I don't know if it fully conveys all of what it's trying to say.
We have been singing this episode's praises, but if you actually watch it, you'll probably be like, what?
Yeah. Again, we read into it a lot.
Yeah,
that's what this podcast is for.
Exactly.
But moving on into other things that we can read into.
Let's take a short break, and we'll come back with another more janky episode. And we're back. We actually took a long break and had dinner.
Yeah. Relaxing.
So, Here we are with Child's Play.
Woo!
During a fight in a baseball stadium, an assortment of Autobots and Decepticons are hurled through the space bridge into a gigantic green child's bedroom on some far-off planet. After some shenanigans with giant parents, giant bullies, and giant cops, the Decepticons are blasted back to Earth while the boy gives the Autobots his toy spaceship to fly home.
Okay.
Okay, but the baseball stadium fight is well animated and a really fun fight and full of great gags and witty one-liners. It's so good.
You know that this episode is gonna be a good one when the first line is a random bystander in a baseball stadium screaming at the Decepticons, "Please let us play ball!"
No, it's not rando. He's a general manager.
He's the general manager. But this whole sequence that plays out, like,
Yeah.
they take, like, a good solid, like, 5 minutes of this 20-minute episode
Yeah.
to just have baseball shenanigans.
Yes.
And it's that all of the Decepticons, and it's like, greater context, the Decepticons set up their space bridge in this baseball stadium.
Yes.
Why? I guess it's because it, like, lined up that day.
Yeah,
with
I guess
the
we're
planet.
we're back to having to move the space bridge around according to planetary alignment. I suppose it makes things easier if the rotation of the planet or something. But I thought that because Cybertron's closer now, they could kind of just beam directly, like that one that was inside the mountainside.
Yeah.
in
I think it's
the core, I think, but
like
yeah.
it does give a good context for, like, hey, if you're you get a few chunks of cardboard and then make a little circle, or just like cut a ring of a toilet paper tube and then paint it purple, stick it in the middle of the floor, and then, or like in your baseball set or your Lincoln Log Castle or something. It's like, this is where the space bridge lined up today.
Yep.
And now all of my Transformers are going to fight each other.
Yep.
But this episode, I think, is just really, really... It takes the concept of Transformers and just has fun with it.
Yeah.
Because it is baseball pun after baseball pun. All of the Decepticons just inexplicably know all of the rules of baseball and are turning it against the baseball stadium as a whole, reveling in the fact that it's like, hey, you don't get to play baseball. Hey, what, think fast.
They start pitching
Pitching players
at each other. They start trying to catch things. Thrust starts shooting baseballs at people.
Yeah,
and then
a baseball guy tries to hit them back.
Yeah, and one tries to catch it and it burns through his mitt.
Yeah.
And he's got his little fingers like, don't worry, I didn't get injured.
Ravage is chasing a guy around all 3 bases.
Yeah.
And
then
the Autobots show up.
Yeah, and Bumblebee tries to hit the balls that Thrust is shooting out of his cannon.
Yeah.
With a bat. And
it's just, I don't know what it is about the fact that they're able to just all be in on it.
Yeah.
Isn't it fun to see how the Transformers interact with the idea of baseball?
Right.
And it's like, does there need to be a reason? Not really. It's just kind of fun.
Right.
And the fact that they're able to just, like, take a step back and revel in the idea of, like, let's just get all of our baseball shenanigans right here. Like, will we ever get a chance to do this again? Who knows?
And then, people slamming into each other, the way that they all end up in the space bridge is, I love Smoke Tree. I got him! And then they just all...
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's so many gags. There's so many...
it's all packed in, like, really quickly.
Yeah, great pacing, great, jokes and crashes and pratfalls and stuff, slapstick comedy routines and stuff like that. It's so much fun. It's really well made. Like the animations, except for the bees in the background, is funny. What happened to the rest of this episode?
Well, it's like, I think this sort of spirit of Transformers of, like, it's not really self-aware. It's not trying to point at itself and be like, isn't this fun? Sort of thing. Like, we're doing a baseball thing.
Right.
You should laugh now, sort of thing. It's more just conscious of the fact that let's have fun with the concept.
Right.
Let's put him in a baseball scenario. And then this episode when it hard pivots into going into space,
Right.
they just kind of have fun with the concept of like, it's Toy Story, but with Transformers.
Right.
I mean, obviously Toy Story hadn't come out at that point, but it's the idea of like, well, they're toys in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're actually toys in the context of the episode, sort of thing. Like they're at the scale of toys.
Yeah.
And doing a mini episode, like not like lengthwise, but just like micro scale.
Yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids episode.
Yeah. It's fun to think about what would it be like if they're small.
Right.
But for Transformers especially, it's actually like a pretty novel concept because they're almost always the biggest thing in the room.
Yeah. On Earth, they're the giants, the titans, but now we've got the now we see that they are among people way bigger. We see, how small, and this episode could easily be an existential nightmare for them.
Yeah.
There are, and they kind of just take it in stride.
Yeah, they're kind of passengers.
I feel like
this whole episode.
The Decepticons are more freaked out by it because their whole shtick is we are the greatest, we are the most powerful.
Yeah.
But the Autobots take it in stride because they've got that humility to them.
And I like that through line of like during the baseball sequence, they're just having fun terrorizing the baseball stadium.
Right.
But then all of a sudden they're being terrorized by all of these mundane things.
Right.
Like
The crazy goldfish.
Turbo, the cat.
The cat, the elephant mouse thing.
Yeah. Starscream especially.
Yeah.
He's just miserable this episode.
This is another one of Starscream's bizarre... We need to do a marathon of Starscream's bizarre adventures.
Yes.
And it's just the King Decepticon Raider and Keith Arthur's court. This episode with Starscream goes to a planet with an assortment of Decepticons.
Yeah.
And then the what else is there? There's the... I guess Triple Takeover would probably count as
That's what I was thinking,
one.
like...
I guess Revenge of or not Revenge, but Starscream's Brigade probably, and then I feel like there's another episode. Well, he's in the God Gambit. That could count.
You could even
too.
consider Starscream's Ghost.
Yeah.
Bizarre adventure.
Right.
But you especially mentioning Triple Takeover, that one has that same sort of sense of like, let's have fun with the idea of like blitzwing in football.
right. Yeah. It's kind of showing how the Transformers interact with Earth culture.
Yeah, and then also like how they interact with the world around them, and on kind of a meta sense of like they are toys in real life.
Right.
This episode kind of gives life to the idea of what if, hey kids, what if your toys came to life?
Right.
And it's just fun.
Yeah. I previously, probably in another episode, said that these guys were like the people on this planet were probably like Unicron sized, but I don't think that's accurate. It's more like maybe Metroplex sized.
Yeah, they're still very big.
But they're still very big. Now, the planet doesn't have to be proportional to them the way it doesn't have to be equivalently proportional to them as Earth is proportional to us, because like Cybertron is much smaller than Earth, even though its inhabitants are much bigger than we are.
Yeah.
So they could be on a small planet, but still, this planet that they're on is probably bigger than Jupiter.
Yeah,
it does look like it kind of has like an Earth similar atmosphere when we get that one shot of it from.
Yeah, this is supposed to be like an
Space.
Earth analog, just scaled up. Like, I don't think they're super focused on like the physics of how the planet works or its size or anything like that.
It definitely kind of falls into that sort of more classic pulp sci-fi genre.
Yeah,
where
definitely.
It's Earth but weird.
Yeah, and the whole tone of the parts with the Autobots basically being the aliens. Mm-hmm. It feels very like Spielberg E.T. sort of feeling of like that classic 80s kids adventure of like, hey, you got a mundane life, but now something spectacular happens, but your parents, they're worried about it, and now the government's involved, and now you gotta run away from them and go on an adventure, but then they gotta go home. So you gotta let them go their way, but you'll always be friends with them. Yeah. That kind of like feel-good 80s movie.
Yeah.
With a sci-fi element to it.
Yeah, it's definitely got that sort of reverse ET thing where the humans are the aliens now. You know? Except in this case, it's Transformers.
There's a oddly applicable movie that I don't even remember what studio made it, but it was Planet 51, and it was literally just every 50s B movie, alien movie, like the general plot of that, but if the human was the alien, and all of the aliens were the human populace.
Yeah.
But it's that. But even like...
Well, I think it's different because like they're also huge, which reminds me of this French film, the Fantastic Planet, or Le Planète Sauvage.
Le Planète Sauvage.
where humans are like these tiny little creatures that are kept as pets, and they're just these giant blue people that rule the planet. And sometimes try to exterminate the humans.
Oh boy.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that. And the designs are somewhat in that vein too for the aliens. They got those big eyes and they kind of look like fish people. Well,
yeah.
The blue people in Fantastic Planet definitely look like fish people, but these guys kind of look like some sort of praying mantis fish people.
Yeah, there's a bit of a... like almost aquatic vibe to them, like kind of look shrimp-like, in a way. But
shrimp.
I will say
they also got like those stereotypical like 3-finger green, little green man,
the 50s B movie, sort of look.
Right. And their costumes look like they came from like Star Trek or something.
This feels like a pretty. This feels like it might be a passion project of some kind for the team involved, because you can tell there's a lot of care put into, the aliens and the way that the world is. It's that, like, not only do they look distinct from each other, they also have, like, decently thought out, like, uniforms and clothes and everything like that, where it's very obvious what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Like the Earth equivalent of what they're trying to say, like, this guy's a military man. Make his outfit vaguely look like a military uniform.
Yeah.
But it works. Like,
Yeah.
And it's distinct enough to be noticeable.
It's not an episode that you have to think very hard. And I'll admit that I didn't really like this episode much as a kid, but like I said, once you stop being edgy, you can really enjoy Transformers for what it is.
Exactly.
But it's just unfortunate that this episode is plagued by just some of the most egregious animation in the entire show.
Oh boy, it starts off good and it does not end good.
I'll talk more about that in errors section, so we can keep on talking about what we want to talk about in this episode. But I really like your connecting point to, like, it's imitating Spielberg.
Yeah. It's that 80s kids movie sort of vibe.
And when you said that, it really clicked for me, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. It's... I am learning to... You have helped me to learn to appreciate this episode a lot better.
You have to come to it on its own terms. If you come at it expecting something like, riveting, engaging, like, tense drama, then, this episode isn't really that. And that's okay.
Which is funny because it leads into a very morally dubious episode.
Yeah.
Morally complex episode.
But, yeah, I think... especially, like, tone-wise, I love the fact that Aaron, the alien kid, he acts in a pretty believable way, is that, he's... there's, like, little touches to his character that feel a little bit more grounded in believability. He's not just, like, ticking the boxes of, like, oh, I gotta go run from the cops now because that's what you do in a plot line like this.
Yeah.
His decision-making and everything about why he cares about the Transformers and stuff just makes sense for a kid his age.
Yeah.
And especially, like, also his parents as well. They're not just the instantly overbearing, like, I don't believe anything my kid says, but it's dangerous, so we're going to call the authorities sort of thing.
Right.
Is that it is just rooted in concern. And when they actually...
Ow, it bit me.
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of this mundane, like,
they got germs.
I don't know what this is, but oh, it's weird and
Yeah, you get a little bit of that, how the mundanity kills people.
Yeah.
You know, the complacency and mundanity kills people.
And again, like, the military.
Which, yeah, it is built off of tropes and stuff, but it works pretty well.
Yeah, it doesn't do those tropes badly.
Yeah. While I mean, that's Transformers as a series as a whole is, it does tropes, but it does them well.
Yeah. It does. This one feels like
it does the Transformer version of this trope or whatever.
Yeah, this one hews closer to like the genre pieces of stuff that you would see in like the Marvel comics and stuff, where it's like, we're doing a Western, we're doing a noir mystery sort of thing.
Oh yeah.
But
like the Matrix Quest.
Yeah. But yeah, I think what really made it click in my head that this was like very, Spielbergian in like tone and everything was Optimus's last words to Aaron, where he's like, every time that you look up at the stars, one of those will be us. Just know that your friends are out there.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, they're friends. Even though it's kind of like it's a hostile situation. If they don't try to befriend this kid, they could very well end up dead.
Yeah.
You genuinely believe that Optimus is like, we're friends.
Absolutely. Yeah. I also think it's interesting that Optimus says they belong on Earth. They don't belong on his planet. They belong on Earth.
Yeah.
Instead of Cybertron, like
they're fully
basically he's calling
Earth
his home.
Yeah.
And I think that's really a sweet sentiment that Optimus has really kind of taken on that mantle of being part of Earth.
Yeah.
It also, ties into we belong on Earth fighting the Decepticons there, keeping Earth safe from the Decepticons, we got to get back.
Yeah.
But
this episode is interesting because it actively doesn't try to resolve its conflict by the end, because it immediately leads into the next one.
Yeah.
Like, they don't get back to Earth at the end of this episode.
Right. The
Decepticons do.
Yeah.
In a very funny way.
I love that Starscream he's like, oh, finally, no more green monsters, and then he immediately gets attacked by alligators.
There's so many.
It's so good.
His screams this episode are so good. I don't know what Chris Latta was on. He was doing such a great job with all of the screams where he's just like, ah! You can absolutely tell this man is miserable.
Right. It's so funny. Chip is in this episode. I thought he was done after Megatron's master plan, but no, he's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chip.
He's back. Very briefly, but he is here.
Number 2. Who did Chip contact on Cybertron? He said, I've already contacted Cybertron and they're not there. Where could they be?
He's in league with Shockwave.
Maybe. I mean, female Autobots haven't been found yet. If we're considering this some sort of chronological order, then they don't know the female Autobots are there.
Right.
Maybe Skyfire is on Cybertron since he can't be on Earth anymore.
Legal issues.
Right. Maybe they've already made contact with Alpha Trion, because Optimus kind of already knows that where Alpha Trion is when he goes there in the search for Alpha Trion.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the ambiguous friends mentioned in Ultimate Doom.
Oh yeah.
But also, what is the map that Chip is looking at? It kind of crossfades to the planet that they're on, but he's like, I have no idea where they are. I was hoping to use that map as evidence that Cybertron is, like, he was scanning the solar system.
Yeah.
And use it as evidence that, look, there's Cybertron next to Jupiter, But that is not our solar system.
Yeah.
At least I don't think it is.
But it is cool seeing like the cutaways back to Earth, and we get a brief moment where Ironhide just like instantly takes charge the instant that Prime is gone.
Yeah,
and it's cool to think about, like, oh yeah, that is the chain of command. That is what he would do.
Right.
And
also, when they get blown up, I think it's interesting that Perceptor has to deduce the schematics, implying that he doesn't know how the Decepticon space bridge turns on and off.
Yeah.
But I guess he learned quite a bit about it.
Nothing that can't be solved without a good kick.
Right. That's in a later episode.
It is.
Isn't
It
it?
just bang.
It kicks
when it starts working.
Yep.
But yeah, we don't really get any other cutaways back to them in the next couple of episodes.
The cutaways stop in the next episode.
Yeah, which is odd, but
One more thing I want to say before we finish up with this episode. The planet that they are on, according to TF Wiki, is called Brobdingnag.
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 Brobdingnagians. And their planet Brobdingnag. I'm surprised there wasn't more Russian accents.
I mean, you're talking about their the authorities' military uniforms. They look a little Russian.
A little bit, tiny bit.
But anyway,
this one and the next one are a run-on sentence. They just kind of go into each other.
I like that.
Speaking of run-on sentences,
we'll talk about that after the break. And we're back with The Gambler.
Yes. On the return journey, the Autobots are captured by Bosch, who plans to sell them as slaves. But Smokescreen and Bosch team up to gamble on Monachus, where they lose the Autobots to a loan shark that puts them in gladiatorial combat before giving them to the Decepticons. Smokescreen and Bosch team up with bounty hunter Devcon and Slazardo to get the other Autobots back.
So, picking up where we left off, which is quite unusual. You said it best when you said that these two episodes are like a long run-on sentence.
They're a run-on sentence.
Because this is not a part 1 and part 2, but we do pick up where we left off. There's not a lot of episodes that do that, but that's why I moved it to here rather than its release spot. Apparently when it first aired, it was a few episodes after this.
Yeah.
That's why in the TF Wiki list, it's a few episodes down, but it doesn't make any sense to put it there. Chronologically, it should come right after this episode, because the next episode in the list would have them, already back on Earth. So,
right.
What gives? But, yeah. So they're flying on in their toy ship, and that's how it connects here. But anyway, that's also how it was in the DVDs that we had growing up from Shout Factory.
Yeah, it's like these two are connected. They are supposed to go together, but there's nothing to indicate that to you
it's not
through like the
one.
broadcast schedule.
Yeah, because these two episodes are two separate adventures, but it's the same group of people in the same situation, although we kind of ditch half the cast to focus on just Smokescreen.
Yeah.
But offhand, the other ones I can recall that do this sort of thing are Countdown to Extinction, where it picks up after Ultimate Doom, Revenge of Bruticus, where it immediately picks up after Starscream's Brigade, the big broadcast of 2006 picking up after the Quintesson Journal. That may be the other way around. I can't remember. I think the Quintesson Journal.
Those two are connected.
Yeah. Anyway, and the Return of Optimus Prime Part 1, where it picks up immediately after
Zombie Prime.
Dark Awakening.
Yeah.
And technically, Fire on the Mountain picks up right after. I mean, it's kind of dubious. Like maybe they left him there for a while. Maybe they came back later. I don't know, but it kind of has a nod to the events of Fire in the Sky.
There's a bit of a fill-in-the-blanks nature to these sort of episodes where, you don't necessarily need to have seen the other one.
Right.
It would definitely give greater context, but at the same time, it's also like, I remember being a kid and would hop into like these shows that had been like 3 or 4 seasons of continuity deep.
Yeah.
And I was still able to kind of just pick up the general gist of what's going on, even if I didn't know, okay, why does this person have these sort of powers? Or, last time I saw this episode of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Casey Jones was just a dude with a hockey stick, and now he's like some elemental god weapon or something like that.
My goodness.
I don't think that actually happened, but, just the general gist of it. Like, when you're young, it depends on the person, but like when I was young, I remember being able to just pick up on stuff like this and just go with the flow with it.
Right.
Like,
you can just use your imagination too.
Yeah,
Kinda,
exactly.
Leaving the map blank in a few areas lets you kind of fill it in with your imagination. And,
And again, that's how like you play with your toys as well. Is that it's just like they're in a spaceship and they're going somewhere, and it's like where do they get the spaceship? Why are they separate from all the other Autobots and stuff? And it's like
media res.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But What's cool about this, though, is that we've really only had like glimpses so far of what space is like
Yeah.
in this universe. Is that we've only really seen everything from the lens of like the Cybertronian War,
Right.
and that there's been little bits and pieces of space with like the Titan, the Morphobots, and everything. But it's always been in the greater context of like the Transformers are the biggest players. They're the most important. This is the first one that kind of flies in the face of that. And
Well, technically, Child's Play.
oh, true.
They're tiny. They're really tiny, but that's kind of like you still treat that as like this anomaly. You know,
Yeah.
you don't really take it seriously.
That's just
but then this
an
episode,
adventure in a strange place.
Yeah.
This one actively takes the time to show the universe is bigger than the Cybertronian conflict, and it doesn't care about them.
Right. It really puts into perspective how small this Cybertronian conflict is
Yeah.
compared to the rest of the galaxy. It feels kind of like Star Wars, where like there's this
Yes.
whole galaxy of aliens out there, and this war that we've put so much stakes on. You know, like how people, you know, all the movies focus on the Jedi, right? You know,
Right.
but when you really zoom out and look at the galaxy as a whole, the Jedi are only a small little group. You
Exactly.
know?
They're 1,000 strong. Like,
Right, you know,
I think
which
it's
is
like
tiny compared to how, you know, how many things are going on around the Star Wars
yeah,
universe.
the intro to this episode does a lot of work to establish that.
Yeah.
Because they're out of their element. They're running low on fuel.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a spaceship, and it's like, well, what's going to happen? A ship that's way, way bigger than them
Yeah.
descends down and pulls them up into a tractor beam. Already, this is like, oh man, this ship is like huge. It's the size of the Ark, basically.
Yeah.
And they step out, and there are armed guards,
Yeah.
and they're people,
Yeah.
but they are the size of Transformers.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of the aliens in this episode are all Transformer scale, you know, size. I'd say 90% of them are completely organic. Some of them might be cyborgs, some of them might be robots, but most of them are organic, and they are the size of Transformers, which means that humans are abnormally small
Yeah.
for aliens in the universe. Like,
Yeah.
even in season 3, a lot of aliens are Transformer sized. There's a few human sized aliens in season 3, but most species are Transformer sized.
Exactly. And it's just the nature of the show. Like, the Transformers are the main characters, and you need characters who are going to interact with them on their scale.
Right.
But still, it's bizarre to see for the first time.
It is.
Then they get shuffled along into this kind of like business as usual procedure of just like, oh yeah, this has happened a bunch of times. The Transformers aren't a novelty.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like, oh yeah, they're another thing. And they get put into this room, have their energy sapped from them, and their autonomy sapped from them.
Yeah, like this is just something that happens all the time.
This is already...
Holy crap, there's a slave trade in space!
Yeah.
And a creepy one at that, because they just get like mind controlled or something.
Yeah. So this is like, oh man, this sounds like something that Megatron would pull.
Right.
This is like a despotic ruler who's like terrorizing the galaxy and everything. And
Right.
then the mastermind steps in, and it's just a guy.
Yeah.
Not just a guy. It's a guy who's broke and can't make ends meet.
Yeah.
And is struggling to meet deadlines and is working with shoddy technology that's breaking down on him and has a crippling gambling addiction.
He reminds me, speaking of Star Wars, he reminds me of Hondo Anaka from Clone Wars, but like missing a few brain cells.
Yeah. It's like he's not the brightest, he's not the smartest. He just has like the resources that he's working with. And those resources, those baseline resources that he's working with they dwarf the Autobots and their ability to fight back.
Right. And it's like,
later we see Energon is used as like a it's a currency and a common thing in this scenario. Like, it brings into question the lore of the Energon cubes. Like, the Transformers are using this stuff to stay alive and keep their planet going, and these people are just throwing it around as money, you know, just gambling with it and stuff.
Right.
Like
it's such a mundane thing.
Right. I thought the Energon cubes was supposed to be some sort of like novelty that they created or something like that. I mean, it does kind of show, like, you know, maybe the Transformers' influence has gone out into the galaxy,
which we do see later in this episode.
Right. We'll talk about that in a second. But like, perhaps Energon, the technology to create Energon, has gone out, and people have adopted that and turned it into you know, currency in this episode.
Yeah, and what that does is it lends credibility to the fact that it adds believability to the Transformers existing as a part of a greater cosmic scale.
Right.
And that they, you know, we've only seen this one aspect of their society and people. There's a whole other world of people who are either completely disconnected from the war or still actively serve in the war, but through different ways, and are making their own way through the universe. Mm-hmm. There's trade happening. They exist as just one part of a giant ecosystem of things. Yeah. And Energon just being this regularly used currency really, really adds to that. Yeah. And the fact that most of the characters, they know about Cybertronians and Transformers and everything like that, but they're just sort of another thing, another ingredient in the melting pot.
Like that one guy, he says, "I got robots up to my ears." Yeah. You know, like, just imagine, like, if they had failed and they stayed slaves, the like the matrix of leadership is just out there, you know, in Optimus Prime, who has no free will and is just, you know, cleaning windows or something. Right. I mean, I'm sure the Decepticons would have caught up and got them eventually, as they seem to do in this episode anyway, but that's just kind of how it plays out. Do you think... Let's go ahead and talk about the Decepticons running a
it's like a cartel.
A cartel in space that, I guess, Megatron... Do you think that there was like a 4 million year gap where... Do you think Megatron set up this like cartel before they left Cybertron, and like Dirge and Ramjet were just
Master
running
Train,
were running this for him while he was gone for 4 million years? Or do you think this is a recent thing?
I think it's probably both. It's that they had this thing established prior to them leaving Cybertron. Yeah. And then millions of years pass, and then, you know, this major player in this crime is gone now, so the whole underworld moves on. And then millions of years pass, and Megatron's back, and now he's here to take back his criminal empire. Right. And the way that they show different characters interacting with the idea of, like, Megatron's heard that you've been skimming off the top. Mm-hmm. They are terrified. Yeah. And it helps establish that, like, well, nobody knows about Optimus, it seems, in this. Nobody's like, you're the leader of the Autobots or anything like that.
But
they're just like...
about Megatron.
Everybody knows about Megatron, though. Yeah. And they're scared of him. And not just in the sense of, like, oh, he's going to come, like, you know, try to take over the planet or anything like that. It's just in that, oh, I owe him money.
Yeah. Maybe he provided the Energon chips to people.
It could be.
Flooded their economy with this new currency.
Most likely as like a scheme to where it's like, I'll flood the market with this and then eventually come to collect, and now I have a bunch of Energon.
Because we see something similar to this in another episode. Interesting. We never see Megatron in this episode. Yeah. He's mentioned, but he's never seen.
He's just chilling on Earth.
But in that episode where Sea Spray goes to the plant, Sea Change. Yeah. There's a Decepticon like colony there, but it's mostly just drones that are running it for Megatron. Yeah. Yeah, speaking of seeing another side of things, Smokescreen is kind of morally dubious in this episode.
Yeah,
like
he's not really gotten too much of a spotlight. He's mostly gotten the spotlight on, like, this is Smokescreen, and his ability is that he can make a giant cloud of smoke.
yeah, he's just kind of a chill dude.
Yeah, he makes a couple of puns related to, like, smoke clouds and stuff like that.
Right.
But that's kind of all we've gotten of him so far.
Right.
This one just kind of throws him into the spotlight of, like, well, it's a fluke that the machine that he was in didn't work. And then we get this little spotlight on him where Bosch is trying to gamble with the machine.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work. And he just slips his little wrists.
Yeah, his little like connection point where he I don't know, reprograms the machine to let him win. So does Smokescreen see the gambling as an opportunity to get in with Bosch so he can win his friends back or something? Or is he actually just that nonchalant about this guy trying to make them all slaves?
Yeah.
And then later on he gets the gambling bug and he's like, I'm betting it all.
Yeah.
Is this supposed to be a warning story of how dangerous gambling is or something? Or is Smokescreen just morally corrupt?
Yeah, there's not really a definition given.
Does he
to
not
him.
care about... I mean, through the episode he's like, we need to get my friends back,
Yeah.
But there's a lot of... His actions don't follow his words, if you get what I'm saying.
He's doing the right thing, but through underhanded means.
Yeah, that too. Which is very interesting for an Autobot.
He's slightly Han Solo-ish
in
his approach.
Yeah,
but
another Star Wars connection.
I love the pairing of Bosch and Smokescreen because it shows that Bosch is he's literally running a slave racket.
Right.
But as the episode goes on, you realize that he's not exactly a bad dude. He's doing horrendous things.
Yeah.
He's doing bad things. He's kind of disconnected from it. That doesn't absolve him of any guilt whatsoever, but he's more of just trying to make his way through the universe, and this is how the universe works. And And yeah,
in some ways it reminds me of a Conan story.
A little bit.
It's the second time I've mentioned.
It's a little
Conan.
bit of a picaresque sort of adventure. But then Smokescreen, him getting a spotlight, shows that we've only ever seen the Autobots as the good guys. They're the upstanding individuals.
Yeah.
Sure, they have their rough edges every once in a while, but they always do the right thing. They're always the good guys. Smokescreen, you kind of get the sense that one, he's got a past of some kind.
Yeah.
That may not have been the most shining sort of background.
He's just living it up in the casinos.
Yeah, you can see him as kind of being like a street guy, just running the streets and everything.
Or maybe he was
that.
like a casino Casanova or something.
Right. You get the sense that he's had a lot of adventures that are maybe more on the darker side of things.
Yeah.
And that, before joining the Autobots, who knows what he was doing, but he's streetwise and street smart.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to do good things all the time. And he kind of has vices as well.
Right.
So, yeah, I love that pairing because it contrasts is that the good guys aren't necessarily as good as you might think they are.
Right.
And the bad guys aren't necessarily as bad as you might think they are.
Right.
And they kind of meet in the middle in this little, noir adventure.
Right. Speaking of meeting in the middle, there we go. Had to figure that out for a second.
Transitional device.
Yeah. Speaking of meeting in the middle, for this episode and the previous episode, I just guessed that the universal translator things that we suggested, like Beachcomber has, and how they're able to speak English and stuff, was making them able to communicate to all the aliens in this and last episode.
Yeah.
But those signs are clearly written in English.
Yeah.
How did English get into space, huh?
If it's a visual HUD, it overlays the different things.
Sure. Also, Asimov is probably a reference to Isaac Asimov, the writer of, a lot of science fiction, a very famous sci-fi writer. And then Sheol, I believe, is in the biblical Old Testament. a Hebrew word for hell or something like that.
The Hebrew underworld.
Yeah, something like that. So it's kind of funny that they go to hell to make a deal with Geikani.
Yeah. I do like the whole setup of Monachus and Sheol, and you get like the glitzy like Vegas strip in Monachus, and then in Sheol it's like the slums, and you got the gladiatorial area is where the cesspool of wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Right, another Star Wars sort of thing.
But just like the whole aesthetic and tone of this whole like kind of criminal underworld, it feels very Star Wars.
Yes.
But it also feels very...
I mean, Geikani is basically Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah, it feels very Marvel Comics Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like that sort of era of... And you see it a lot in the Marvel Comics of Transformers itself.
Yeah.
But that kind of... a little bit more gonzo, but also very grounded and rooted in, like, design-wise, kind of all over the place.
Right.
And a little goofy in some areas. But at the same time, it feels very eclectic and, like, stuff with, like, the Animalians.
Yeah.
They look very action figure 80s He-Man sort of look.
Yeah.
Which, very vibrant, very cool way of establishing this place as like it's a melting pot of all these different places and things and ideas and concepts all over the universe coming together.
Right.
You can run into anything on Monachus, such as a fellow Autobot.
Yeah. So another Star Wars parallel here. DevCon is sort of like Boba Fett in that he is super cool but doesn't do anything.
Yeah. DevCon has a good entrance and a good introduction.
Yeah.
Because I think this whole episode is about like challenging challenging your preconceived notions about like what makes Autobots and Decepticons and stuff like that, where it's like it's not just about Autobots and Decepticons standing in front of each other, shooting at each other until one of them dies.
Right.
It's also this whole spectrum of different things. Like not everything is as it seems.
Don't judge a book by its cover.
Don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah, like DevCon, his appearance is like, he is like, oh, who's that cool guy?
Yeah.
And then, you think he's like a real big tough guy who's, it might be a villain or something.
Yeah.
Other than his very primary color schemes.
And his the prominent Autobot symbol.
Yeah, but like the second that he recognizes Smokescreen as an Autobot, just instantly lights up.
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
And he's like, oh, sweet, what's up, man?
Yeah.
Like that. And I love that.
I like that it shows that there's other people out there doing their Autobot things.
Yeah, his presence establishes so much of like, there are people who are still aligned with the Autobot cause and swear allegiance to the Autobots. But they're doing it their own way.
Yeah. Well, his allegiance to the Autobots is the Decepticons must be stopped at all costs.
Yeah. His Decepticons must be stopped at all costs, and the way I'm doing that is by bringing them to justice, and might as well get paid for it on the way.
Yeah, so. As a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty neat, that, he's out there doing his own things, having his own adventures. It shows that there's more than meets the eye. Exactly. That's what you were looking for earlier. There's more than meets the eye to this scenario, this Autobot Decepticon war.
And then, case in point, we also get Slazardo.
Right. Yeah.
Who's this horrible little sleazebag, like, just
what
like,
a name. What a name.
Yeah. But it's like, you get the sense that he's just a minion.
Yeah.
The whole time, and he's
apparently.
a tool.
Apparently, wherever he's from, that language is not in the universal translator.
Yeah.
Because he's the only one in this episode that doesn't speak English.
Bosch is the only one who knows what he's saying.
Right. And then I love the idea of DevCon and Slazardo out there doing bounty hunter things like The Mandalorian.
Intergalactic adventures of Slazardo and DevCon. I need it as a whole, like, series.
Well,
same with Trax and Raul.
Well, unfortunately, I got bad news for you. Despite how cool DevCon is, Slazardo's the only one that returns to the show.
No!
So apparently whatever happened out there didn't go well for DevCon.
Yeah.
So either he's dead or they just got tired of each other. Probably I think there is like a comic or something where Devcon kicks Slizardo out, which I think is just really
That's kind of mean-spirited.
It's kind of mean-spirited. It's
I honestly
it's one of
could see
those
them-
like one of those fan convention fan made comics
Yeah.
that's sort of
It's a non-canon one-shot to justify
it is
a
a
one-off
it's
production
like
model.
semi-canonical or like a
Yeah.
prose story or something. I don't know.
Proto-canonical.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of mean that he just immediately gets rid of Slizardo.
Yeah, no, I could honestly see it just being like they professionally break up because after a point he's just sort of like, listen, man, I don't understand a word you're saying.
We had creative differences.
Yeah.
The speaking of creative differences, the first time I saw him, we watched the movie well before we saw this episode.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, is that Blur showing up early?
Yeah, he's got the
it's
gun thing on his head.
Yeah. And now I think there is a DevCon toy, and I'm pretty sure he is a retooling of the Blur toy.
Yeah, I know there's one that's, I think it's a redeco of a Scourge model or something, but
That's an older one, but the most
Yeah.
recent one that just came out, which is, in the official main line. The previous ones were all, once again, fan convention exclusives or whatever. But, the mainline one, I'm sad that it doesn't come with a Slizardo.
yeah. I love Slizardo too because it's like, he's the minion and everything, but it's not really that he has a heart of gold per se. It's just that
He's tired of taking orders.
He's tired of taking orders. He's a tool. He just kind of takes... He's only good if somebody's, like, telling him to do stuff.
Yeah.
And he just so happens to be discontent enough to turn against his boss.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like, hey, go on an adventure with me. And he's like, okay, I guess. And...
Yep.
Yeah, like, I love the fact that they... he's doing good, but he's not exactly a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's an implied past because he's got an eye patch.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
whatever backstory that implies, it might just be that he's beat up a lot.
Yeah, probably. Also, that hooded guy that kind of looks like a Jawa.
Yeah.
A really tall Jawa.
I thought he looked like the spy that rats out the Millennium Falcons.
Oh, yeah, him. I can't remember what his name is.
Yeah, the one that goes...
Yeah, that guy. Has the most annoying boss fight in Lego Star Wars for some reason.
Oh, gosh.
Yep. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he's the same guy who sees them go into Gaikani that, unless there's multiple people that look just like that, I think he's the same guy. He sees them go into Gaikani's place as he's going out, they're going in, and then he notices Smokescreen cheating. Which also...
Smokescreen cheats!
Smokescreen cheats at gambling, and he makes it super obvious with all of his puns. He's like, it's all in the wrist. Basically pointing at his thing. Yeah. Oh, I've got a special connection.
Right.
Also, Optimus supports gambling.
Yes!
Let's go, the 80s.
Let's go gambling! Before we leave...
And also, Transformers cry, and Transformers also cough on smoke. Apparently.
Yes, they do. Before we head out from this episode,
Yes.
I do want to bring up the gladiatorial pits.
Yeah.
The Animalians and, that whole thing. Number one, these things are huge. These things
Yes.
are massive. They're terrifying. They're enough to go toe-to-toe with Optimus.
Yep.
And not just Optimus. There's Optimus basically on adrenaline and
Steroids.
steroids.
Unstable Energon. It reminds me of Synthin from Transformers Prime.
Yeah, and it has a pretty unique effect where it sends them into overdrive, but then they get tired afterwards.
Right.
So pretty neat there. Optimus condones gambling.
Yeah.
And pretty enthusiastically.
Yeah.
Don't know what the messaging is there.
I don't know what to make of this episode. They still don't get back to Earth.
Exactly. And then the next episode, they are just on Earth.
They're
You
just
have
on
to
Earth.
accept it.
Yep.
And that's okay.
I guess
We had a wonderful spacefaring adventure.
probably Bosch came to Earth, dropped them all off, and then depopulated a country.
More slaves.
Tiny slaves.
Tiny slaves. I don't know what to do with these.
The real. Then he sold them to the big green people on BroBots.
Yeah. Here's microscopic people.
And that's how we got the Planet Fantastique.
Lovely.
Okay, let's take a break. And we are back with Kremzeek! Kremzeek! While building an energy magnet, Megatron creates Kremzeek! A little lightning gremlin that messes with everything electronic. It attacks the Autobots and leads them to Japan, where it multiplies before recombining into a giant. Blaster and Japanese engineer Dr. Yoshikawa use a huge antenna to launch Kremzeek at the Decepticon energy magnet, which it destroys. They then disperse Kremzeek!
Watching the waveform for this audio file is very entertaining. Just giant spikes and then flat. And then giant spikes.
So yeah,
Biggest
gotta
note-
catch them all.
Biggest note, right off the bat. Kremzeek! That is all.
All right, let's move on to our segments.
There we go.
It's a Pokemon. It's
He's literally...
This is like what, 15, 20 years before Pokemon?
Yep, basically.
Or 10 years
He's just a
before
little Sparky boy.
And it's Pikachu.
And the fact that he is just created, like, spontaneously, we don't even really know what Megatron is trying to do.
Yeah, I like that he's just kind of curious. He's just experimenting
Just
with
tinkering
the tools,
around.
You know?
Like, he says, "You will be my ultimate weapon against the Autobots."
Was he trying
I
to
don't
make it?
think it was. I think he was just messing around with, like,
Yeah.
electrical-based things.
Yeah.
And then Kremzeek
let's see what's-
spontaneously came into being.
Yeah. And Megatron's like, well, I made something. We'll use it as a weapon to destroy the Autobots.
Yeah.
It's totally on brand for him.
And he's kind of fond of him as well.
Yeah.
Which I like, where he's
man,
like,
he's so
"Soon, my little gremlin." My little gremlin. And it's just... I don't know. I don't think there's any sort of attachment that Megatron has
Yeah.
to him as, like, an individual.
Right.
Beyond just, like, the general curiosity of him. It's like, "Oh, look at you. You're a little freak."
Right.
Which, yeah, he is. It's interesting to see how he, like... He's a interesting combo of being basically a slapstick cartoon monster,
Yeah.
but he operates logically, like, according to the rules of, like, electronics and electricity and technology and being able to scramble circuitry and how he interacts with, like, energy.
Right.
There is a logic to him that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's mostly there to justify the fact that he can interact with the world in a very Looney Tunes way.
Yeah. I remember you really liked this episode as a kid, too.
I did.
Yeah.
I think it's just that he's a little freak.
Yeah.
We all love a good little goblin freak.
Yeah. Speaking of weird things he can do, I love that cut of Kremzeek jumping through the camera to the screen.
Yes.
Like, he jumps into the security camera and then out of Teletrans screen.
Right.
That's just such a... The way they edited that, too, is just really good.
Yeah. He moves through the world in a very cartoon logic way, but it makes sense where it's like, well, yeah, he moves at the speed of light. He is energy. He's just electric energy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's like, it justifies a lot of more abstract slapstick
Yeah.
actions and stuff, which I love.
Also, do they have a giant wooden table? Smokescreen holds that up, and then he just, like, burns a hole through it.
It's again, another interesting thing is that you'd think that it's like, oh, everything that's conductive he can interact with. But sometimes he can just burn through a hole,
Right,
burn
like
a
a
hole
lightning-
through a wooden table.
Like a lightning bolt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably not supposed to be a wooden table, but it's shaped like just a table.
Yeah.
It's just so funny. Also, it's funny that Megatron riding inside Thrust. He's got like some sort of like...
Scale.
Yeah, he's got like some sort of porthole that doesn't exist on
Yeah,
Thrust.
it's like he's a passenger plane or something
Right.
instead of a VTOL fighter jet.
Right. Also, that insulation, is that the same that Sparkplug coats them with? Is that the same fire retardant foam that kills people in Ultimate Doom?
Yeah. I like to think that was originally really, really deadly to Cybertronians, but now they've actually, like, foolproofed it to where it's like, okay, it's not going to kill people if it touches them.
Right.
But
okay, one more random note. They flew Omega Supreme to Japan, Probably because Skyfire's passport was revoked due to lacrosse problems.
Yeah, he's fighting his legal battle in the Japanese courts.
No, he can't get into Japan until
he can't get in there. Okay,
until his legal battle is resolved.
That's fair.
Because of Robotech and lacrosse.
I do need to see a picture of Skyfire in a suit and tie, sitting at the witness stand.
with the Super Valkyrie on the
yes,
in the accuser.
My client has defrauded my name.
You don't even have a name. I have 2 names.
Yeah.
You don't even have a name. But yeah,
this episode is a lot of just. It's a chase. It's like a shenanigans chase episode,
right.
And it's the whole episode. And I do love the slow descent of the Autobots, just kind of more and more panicking of just like, I don't know, we just have to go catch this thing. It's
right.
Just kind of losing it by the end of the episode.
Yeah. So my wife has an interest in Japanese culture. She speaks a little bit of Japanese and stuff. So she was interested in this episode, and here's a few of her notes she gave me was, first off, she doesn't think Japanese people would be too surprised to see the Transformers, which honestly they aren't. They're only surprised to see Kremzeek.
Yeah.
In fact, Dr. Yushikawa, he's cool. He's like, he gets right down to business. He comes up with Autobot level crazy plans.
Yeah.
And he's very honored to meet the Autobots. Just annoyed that he thinks that, or he's annoyed when he thinks that they are the ones causing chaos in his lab.
Autobots, very honored. You did this!
Secondly, she was saying that I've always thought that they were just had some people mumbling random mumbo jumbo, like,
Japanese jargon.
right, like just some people in the studio just saying random stuff, making it sound like Japanese. But no, she said that, and this is confirmed by TF Wiki also, that they are actually speaking Japanese.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Texan, she said, it sounds like a Texan trying to say Japanese words, but it is actual Japanese. Like the lady by the train says like something along the lines of "be more careful" in Japanese. Also, the guy with the Walkman's from Japan, and then also my wife said that the arcade, the words above it, I thought it was just a random amalgamation of shapes, but it's just a weird way to write arcade in Japanese.
Apparently, a lot of the kanji in a lot of the signs and stuff is just kind of scuffed.
Well, the funny thing is that you would think that, Toei is a Japanese animation studio, so they would be good at representing Japan, right?
Yeah.
But Toei didn't animate this episode. It was outsourced to an unknown
unknown studio.
An unknown studio. Yeah.
Probably were like, look, we don't want to step on any toes, so we're just going to send this to somebody else.
Now, my wife also said they're robots, so why don't they just learn to talk in Japanese, right? Why don't they just Google Translate? And I brought up the thing about the universal translator, and they probably are speaking in Japanese at this point, but we're just getting into English. So it'd be very interesting to do a fan edit of this episode where the first half is in English and then you cut to the Japanese dub of this episode once they get to Japan.
Yeah.
Which also another question was, why was the Sky Spy spying on Japan? And I think it's probably because the Sea Scraper is near Japan.
Yeah.
And so it's not just irony that they happened to end up in Japan where the Sea Scraper was 200 miles off the coast.
Well, I like that Megatron drops Kremzeek off, and then it's just like dusts his hands, and it's like, all right, let's work on the Sea Scraper.
Right.
That's in Japan.
Yeah.
Miles away from here.
Yeah.
Having no clue that Kremzeek was going to wind up in Japan and basically ruin his entire plan.
Right. I love it when Megatron's plans backfire on it.
It's so good.
It is cool to see, like, in Secret of Omega Supreme, we got to see San Francisco and Mount McKinley, which are also real-world places, but now we get to see a whole nother real-world country.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been to other countries before in this, in Transformers G1 cartoon.
We'll be back in Japan later in the show.
And we will be back in Japan. Yeah.
But I think part of why I liked this episode so much as a kid was the escalation of it. Is that it's a slow... or not even slow, it's like a pretty fast build up from he's just a little guy at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then it builds to, oh, well, now he's wreaking havoc on a citywide scale.
Right.
Oh, and now he's wreaking havoc on, like, he's multiplied. And he's
Yeah,
all
now
these
there's a
little,
bunch of them.
yeah,
Gotta catch them all.
baby rainbow Kremzeeks
Right,
all over
right.
the place. And then from there, he actually escalates in size to where he's a kaiju.
Yeah, he
and then
basically-
it finally clicks in my head of why they're in Japan. It's to do Godzilla.
Yep.
It's to do a kaiju.
Yeah. And another parallel with Godzilla, also that tower that they shoot him out of, I think that's supposed to be the Tokyo Tower, which
Oh, yeah.
put them in Tokyo,
Right.
which, again, Godzilla. And also there is a sign where people are watching a Godzilla movie.
Yes, that's probably one of my favorite, like, little vignettes in this episode is all of the moviegoers coming out of the theater. Apparently, they say in Japanese, that was one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And then they come out and look up, and there's a giant kaiju-sized Kremzeek looking down at them, and he looks pretty ominous. And
Yeah.
And then he just cracks the biggest smile of like,
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. But another parallel with Godzilla is that they go out to sea to kill it. They
Yeah.
defeat it on land first, and it goes out to sea. Then they have to follow it out to sea and disperse Kremzeek.
Yeah, it's it's also very odd because it's, you know, freedom is the right of all sentient beings, except for Kremzeek.
Well, how sentient is he?
Yeah,
Yeah, he knows one thing.
that is the question.
Chaos.
He seems more like a.
He has some degree of intelligence, but like on an animal.
He's
level,
clever.
I think.
He's smart. You can definitely tell that he's crafty and you know, belligerent and everything. He's doing it for, you know, just to wreak havoc and stuff. He's a creature of pure chaos. Is there a lot of like thought behind that? Probably not. I think he's just like he only exists in the present sort of thing.
Yeah.
And you know, it doesn't seem to be that there's any sort of like attachment to anything whatsoever. He's just a crazy little goblin gremlin. Like
Yeah.
You know.
Don't overthink it. Just have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything tied to like sparks or energon or lifeblood or anything like that. It's just a little crazy electricity dude.
He's just a one-off little guy.
Yeah. And
But then there's like another one that pops out of a blaster at the end and it gets away. So
Yeah.
what do you think ever happened to him?
I think it's like, you know, anywhere that there's electricity, there's a Kremzeek out there somewhere.
Yeah.
And
a
he's
man
just
out there.
he's
There's a
sort
man
of
out there.
like he's sort of the explanation for like, well, he's why technology will sometimes just go haywire.
He's why we had to re-record this episode.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a fun one.
I know he shows back up in a couple of episodes, or not episodes, a couple of different Transformers continuities as just like a little inside joke reference sort of thing.
Yeah, apparently
as like product placement or like a mascot or like I think he's in Kiss Players, but we don't talk about Kiss Players.
Yeah, we don't talk about this. I know that I think his most recent appearance was in a Ghostbusters crossover comic.
Oh my!
And
Is he one of the ghosts?
kind of, he's
Yeah.
like the avatar of electricity, and also is hot for some reason.
What?
He's like,
I mean, I know he's got pecs, but he's also got like
ripped.
a beer gut in the.
but he also still has
Kaiju
like the
Kremzeek.
Kremzeek face, where it's
Yeah.
like the bah sort of
Yeah,
look. He wears a cloak for most of the time, and then like he
Okay.
dramatically reveals himself to be this like Adonis figure with the Kremzeek head, and it's just so weird.
I mean, I guess that works. He has a lot of different body shapes throughout this. Like sometimes he's like this fat little chunky guy.
Little tubby dude.
Yeah. I love those scenes where he's just kind of marching his way up to Blaster,
Yeah.
you know. And then sometimes he's like this long, lanky guy with uncomfortably long legs.
And at other times he just is like a little sprite, like he doesn't
Yeah.
even have legs.
Yeah. He just got a lightning bolt.
Other
tail.
times he just doesn't even show up. He's just in the machines.
Yeah.
and stuff.
And then Kaiju Kremzeek kind of has a beer gut and pecs.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely want to see this guy show up more often.
Actually, I will talk one thing about Kiss Players is that if I remember correctly, he is actually like a weapon, like they load Kremzeeks into
Yes,
shells
there
and
are
they shoot him
Kremzeek
out of
bullets.
guns. Which is just, okay, I will give you, that is cool.
That is a very fun concept.
But yeah.
Kremzeek, man.
Kremzeek, yeah. A couple of little short notes here. I already said Dr. Yushikawa is cool. He can really hang with the Autobots.
Yeah. Optimus uses honorifics, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. No connection to Dr. Fujiyama, the famous scientist, I'm afraid.
He's in another league.
Yeah. Again, we see energy just go back to where it was, but this time I think it's because the drain has stopped, so production begins again rather than it just mystically refilling the Dinobot Island.
Yeah.
We get another example of Starscream charging in. Again, not a coward. Not a coward. Optimus can apparently go up to 200 miles per hour, according to his speedometer. The Walkman is Japanese, so it's funny that it shows up here. There's a sumo wrestler at the arcade. And the Autobots use a lot of Earth idioms in this episode, but I guess it makes sense since they've been here for a while.
Yeah. They're naturalized at this point.
Yeah.
Jazz has gotten to them.
Yeah. Anything else?
Kremzeek! And that's it.
All right. We'll take a short break and get on with our segments. Best quotes and weird robot lingo. Oh, I'm sorry. Our first segment, Best Quotes and Weird Robot Lingo. Secret of Omega Supreme. Hayden, you want to read these ones?
Question. Irrelevant. Answer. Private. Omega having a very good way of healthy boundaries.
Yes.
Scavenger struggling with his door. Open, you stupid door! Devastator does a really good line reversal where Omega was trying to reprogram the Constructicons and says, quit squirming, this is for your own good.
Yeah.
And then when they come back as Devastator
Yeah.
and are about to robo-smash him,
Yes.
it says, quit squirming, this is for your own good.
Oh, just twisting that knife
Yeah.
with the trail.
Really good. Cosmos. Oops! Being very clumsy. Cosmos being very tired of having to deal with the crap of being the only one who can go to space. Again? Revenge. Soon. Anticipation. High. Vengeance. Good. Tracks. Keep San Francisco clean. Leave! Course of action. Altered. Omega Supreme's cadence is just very entertaining to listen to.
It's just very fun.
Remember, man, we're all one with the universe. We're about to become one with the pavement. Duck! Beachcomber and Trax.
Drax is just stealing the show.
He's great. Every single episode he's in. Compliment. Appreciated.
For Child's Play. As general manager of this stadium, I respectfully request that you let us play ball! The general manager of the stadium.
The general manager.
Look, Optimus. A building. I think it's Bumblebee that says that.
Yep.
It's just funny the way he says that. Ow!
Building.
It bit me. The dad. Hand it over before I rearrange your face. Marty, the meanest guy in the universe.
We don't know what he's planning. He could very well be.
They look nice enough, but they could have germs. The mom. We get a mention of silicon dust, and then Optimus Prime says, "Don't tell us about it. Just do it, Perceptor." And then Optimus again, every time you look through your telescope at the stars, you'll know that your friends are out there.
Wholesome.
Wholesome.
The Gambler. It's all in the wrist. Smokescreen being very on the nose. By the way, that's payable within the hour.
Just the ridiculousness of that. How? How?
Maybe don't take it before.
But apparently they did it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he says, "Oh, we've got more energon than we'll ever need."
Just bet it all.
And then Smokescreen just being a jerk.
Astro Train. It's always the same thing. I fly them to points unknown, exhaust all my fuel, and they get to have all the fun.
Okay, I want to say something. I I never realized until this particular watch through of Generation 1 that Astro Train may be one of my favorite characters.
He slowly goes from ambitious
Tyrant of
tyrant,
the Tyrant of Titan.
just kind of done with
the
everyone's...
freight train.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going to do something crazy. Bosh. I am. Watch. Smokescreen in response. Who says this?
I think it's Smokescreen.
Give us the Autobots ramjet. How about some laser beams instead? Astro Train, being iconic once more. Now prepare to meet my friend, Mr. Ionic Displacer. The Decepticons must be stopped at all costs.
DevCon quoting Optimus Prime before Optimus Prime says it.
Yeah, he pioneered it.
Yeah. Kremzeek! Alert! Evil Martian flamingos have invaded supermarkets across the globe! They have come to steal Earth's ammonia!
Teletran making more sense than he ever has in life.
Kremzeek! Choo-choo.
Choo-choo.
Faster, Prime! Faster! Slower, Prime! Slower! Good thinking! No! Bad thinking!
Optimus ramming into the back of a train as well.
Ouch. Oh, the Autobots. Very honored. You did this! But he's kind of cute. And then my wife liked how B says, Shibuya!
Shibuya! Kind of sounds like he's saying it like Cowabunga.
Yeah.
Shibuya!
Alright, next segment. Favorite characters in this batch of episodes. Mention who and why.
I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's Kremzeek. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of difficult not to.
Yeah. I also kind of like Cosmos.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm a fan of Bosch a little bit.
Yeah.
Kinda
Interesting.
like Bash.
Very interesting character.
Interesting
Yeah,
character.
Yeah.
But it's Kremzeek.
Yeah. I think Kremzeek
For obvious
takes
reasons.
it this time. I do like DevCon and Slazardo.
Cosmos is also up there.
Yeah. Astro Train.
Oops.
Trax also trying to steal the show at the last minute.
Every single scene he's in, and by golly, does he deserve it?
All right, but I think Kremzeek wins this.
Kremzeek for sure.
All right, next segment. Magic Slidey Hand Tech. Any notable gadgets? The Robo Smasher.
Yep.
The Component Breaker Downer.
So there's like a little,
What?
It's a little box
yeah.
that Megatron sticks the ore in and says
Right.
it'll break it down into its basic components. And it's just funny that it's like a little toaster oven, but for ore.
Also, Megatron's Mega Binoculars.
He's got the giant, huge set
On a
of
tripod.
binoculars on a tripod. It's beautiful, and they're purple too.
Yep. Inferno has a net.
Yep.
Perceptor's shoulder lens comes off. We get another shrink ray.
Yeah.
Smokescreen's gambling wire. DevCon has a chest radio. Blaster has a chest panel. We get to see the insides. And the energy magnet.
Yeah.
Also, Mr. Ionic Displacer.
Yeah. I will say, I do like. It's weird that Inferno's net isn't like. There's no structure to it at all. It just extends from his ladder. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't think it would really work, would it?
Yeah, no.
Those guys broke their necks for sure. Also, it's funny the energy
There was
magnet
no give
looks
to
like
the net.
a mace.
Oh, yeah.
Favorite error. Sorry, next segment. Favorite errors. Any noteworthy animation, sound design, or lore mistakes?
Oh, boy.
All right. So Secret of Omega Supreme. There is a noticeable dip in animation and art quality. Apparently, this is by one of the unknown studios, and this starts a trend that we see a lot of in the later half of season 2, where the background art isn't as detailed. It's more impressionist. There is kind of odd writing and pacing in this episode. It's not... The editing's a little weird. They reuse some animation and stuff, and it's not super well executed. But it's a very ambitious and very interesting story.
Yeah.
Toei seems to outsource a lot more in the second half of season 2, And my theory on that is because they were working on the movie around this time.
Right.
So they had
diverting their resources.
Yeah, they were diverting their resources to that, and putting their outsourcing some of the episodes to make up for it. Child's Play, however, is plagued with some of the most egregious animation errors.
Holy moly! It's mostly animation errors that are like layers overlapping.
Or missing layers.
Missing layers,
like the
or
kid's
layers
head
overlapping where they really, really shouldn't be.
So, yeah, but what's weird is Child's Play is animated by Toei.
Yeah.
But they must have been putting their, like, C or D team on this episode.
Well, it's like...
Well, no. Like, the baseball sequence is
It's
their
perfect.
probably their B team, because A team's working on the movie.
Yeah.
But the rest of the episode is the C and D team.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to Secret of Omega Supreme. Sideswipe is in the Decepticon base for some reason. I think he's probably a miscolor. Well, he's probably
totally off model.
It's just Sideswipe.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to be Soundwave because of the shoulder thing, but no, I don't know. Scale is a joke through this whole episode.
Oh, yeah.
Hook is on the asteroid and at the refinery base at the same time somehow. There is a sad music warble, which is kind of funny. There's also not really an animation error, but just an interesting shot of Prime's tires as he drives to find Omega Supreme.
Yeah.
And then sometimes Omega's tower goes with him while he flies away.
He doesn't leave it behind. Yeah.
It was funny. Child's Play. Yeah, as we said, all sorts of stuff just all over the place.
Yeah.
Skywarp becomes Starscream at one point, or does he? Maybe Starscream just intercepts. There's some Mii's in the stadium at one point. Perceptor drives in microscope mode, despite having a third tank mode.
Yep.
Starscream has a gun in his face. Poor Nitro gets put over chopped in half and put over the the ship.
Yeah.
And also catches up to the Autobots that are supposed to be riding on him. And then Aaron's head disappears at one point.
Just gone.
Starscream has weird leg animation when he's fighting in the sewer. There's just a lot of really bad animation or static shots and just mistakes.
It's a bit rough.
Mistakes were made.
It's a wee bit rough.
Also, as the episode goes on, the pacing becomes more like a comic book than a TV show, where it's just kind of in panels, things are happening. There's no transition between it. Somebody's in one mode and then we cut and they're suddenly in a different mode and they're talking about something totally different, and then we cut and they're doing something totally different.
There's no transitional action.
It's especially noticeable when they're preparing the telescope and the rocket ship.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Gambler. There's some not too egregious, but there's some through this. Most notably, I mention the Autobots no clip through the floor. When they're supposed to be being lowered through an elevator or something, but they just boop gone.
Right.
And then also Tiny Slizardo,
Little baby Slizardo.
where Bosch walks forward, but Slizardo stays the same. And
It's like shrinking Slizardo.
Yeah. Kremzeek. Again, this is an unknown studio, and it shows several characters are off model at times, especially the first shot with Megatron. But it does kind of remind me of the original Gundam series.
Yeah. The drawn on a napkin Gundam series.
We get blue-eyed Megatron. Jazz's voice is weird. Definitely not Scatman Crothers.
Yeah.
Also, Jazz died, and then he's just behind Ratchet, still alive. Starscream has a face mask for some reason.
Not a bad look, honestly.
Yeah. The long legs make me uncomfortable.
Ugh.
Why does Dr. Yushikawa ride on the outside of Optimus Prime?
He's just going too fast.
Yeah. Also, my wife pointed out that it looks like he's strangling himself when he's stroking his chin, thinking. And then also she wondered how Blaster knows where the satellite or the energy needle is.
Blaster gets around.
Yeah.
He DJs for different stations around the globe.
On to our next segment. TF Wiki Go Button Trivia page. Mine is... It's my turn this week. Hacksaw! He is a Minicon Dinobot.
Alright, let's see him.
Yeah, he's kind of cool. He turns into I am a Stegosaurus!
Oh, man.
He was designed by David Willis for a prose story in the Classics line. Apparently, he is one of the minicons created by the last Autobot to rebuild Cybertron.
Whoa.
So this follows at the end of the original Marvel comics. And he served as Modus Prime's second in command, and he goes on to have several adventures in these stories.
Huh.
He is, I believe, he is based on, I want to say he's based on some sort of minicon dinosaur, but I can't remember what.
Well, he looks pretty distinct with how he transforms. Yeah. I like that he's got, like, the Stegosaurus parts aren't where you think they'd be. Like, his tail spikes are
on his feet.
And
he's got like a little shield made out of the dorsal fins.
Yeah, and the spikes, the dorsal fins make like a mohawk as well.
Oh yeah, he's got a mohawk. The dorsal fins.
Yeah.
Apparently, it is an axe, an arm-mounted battle axe, and apparently he also speaks. He occasionally lapses into Grimlock-style grammar to mask his wisdom.
Interesting.
But his colleagues know that he's a stoic leader and a loyal friend.
Huh. Is there a toy of him at all, or
not according to TF Wiki? I want to say that he is similar to in the Classics toy line. There were several dinosaur minicons that were produced, and I want to say he's similar to that, but in that vein, but I'm not sure he actually is based off of any of those.
Huh.
Let me see if I can pull those up real quick. And there we go. Demolition Team Dinobots. Yeah, no, they're the Minicon Dinobot team from the Classics toy line. The toys include a Triceratops, a Pterodactyl, and a T-Rex. But Hacksaw is listed on their page, but he does not have a toy.
Interesting.
Which is interesting.
He's unique.
Yeah.
I always love these like little micro builds sort of designs. Like
I love
the
minicons.
The minicon size makes them have really unique transformations and designs and stuff. So.
Yeah, the scaling makes them kind of unique and chunky and kind of awkward and ungainly, but
But sometimes they have
enjoyable way.
And then like personality-wise, they're usually like they're either very neutral or they are loaded with personality.
Right. When we get to the Unicron trilogy, I'll talk about how weird it is that they're like small vehicles, but like I love minicons.
Yeah,
I love minicons.
Who doesn't love minicons? They're Transformers Pokemon.
yeah, basically. Anyway, on to our next segment. Cliffhanger questions. Last time I asked Hayden, what is your favorite character arc in Transformers? Like the whole like franchise, like any of the shows, any of the comics, whatever you want.
It's interesting.
Any of the characters.
Yeah.
Human or Transformer.
It's interesting that we did discuss characterization, character development, and character growth in this
episode. So it kind of lined up pretty good.
Yeah.
It's almost like I planned that.
Yeah.
What's funny is I actually didn't.
Yeah.
I thought of that on the spot.
So this one kind of lands in the it kind of hits all three quadrants, I think, because it gets we get characterization of him where it's like we see how he operates, we see the facets of his character, and then he doesn't necessarily change by the end of the episode. We get other episodes where he is developed, where he learns stuff, he learns stuff for the better or for the worse. Doesn't necessarily change, at least not immediately. And then we also get pretty radical character growth as well, where over time he does eventually change from where he once was.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a pretty easy choice as far as like character arcs, because you think, okay, there's a lot of like really good characters in Transformers, but which of them have like an arc, like a really good change over time sort of thing, or just a good developed arc?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of really good contenders, but for me, he's a masterclass in it is Dinobot from Beast Wars.
I should have seen it coming.
It's pretty obvious.
Yeah, you were always a massive Dinobot fan. Well, I really like Dinobot too.
Who doesn't? But he's
Predacon Maximal Dinobot.
Yeah, he starts with like a lot of like, he does start immediately with a big change. That he goes from the Predacons to the Maximals.
Yeah, like first or second episode.
Yeah, pretty quickly. But we get a lot of characterization with him in those in that first season of like he grapples with a lot of like things like loyalty and honor and everything like that, but for the most part he just kind of is like grumpy and doesn't like dealing with Maximals sort of thing. But we get characterization. We get character development where he's starting to learn to be more of a part of a team and kind of like is learning to accept his place there, even though he still feels like shame and dishonor at what he did. And then we have character growth. He flirts a lot of time with going back to his old ways. He is constantly resisting the temptation to just, might as well just be a Predacon again, sort of thing. But then, like, it gets more and more drastic character growth to where eventually we get to the point of Code of Hero, which is the definitive Dinobot episode.
Spoilers.
Yeah, this is the moment that Dinobot is revealed that he is a hero. That is who he grows to become. Then, even after his, spoilers, death. Even after his death, we still get development on him through his clone, Dinobot 2. He shows back up, and it's basically putting him back to square zero. Of like, he's back to where he once was as just a Predacon, no thoughts of anything else. In fact, his sense of honor is completely stripped.
He's been robo-smashed.
Exactly. But even then, we still get development on him where it's like, okay, barring any of the circumstances that we met him at the beginning of the show, all of the circumstances that led to him becoming a Maximal. At first in title, and then in deeds, and then in character. Would he still make the same choices in completely different scenario? And the answer by the end of Dinobot 2's character arc is yes. He is a hero. By the end of the show. And I think that there's such a wide range of arc that this character has, and it really is lended to by the format of the show being very episodic, having a lot of like deep continuity, but still taking time to let characters breathe and have their own little like downtime moments and everything. And I think that solidifies Dinobot as being like my favorite character arc of Transformers. I was also going to say Depth Charge from Beast Wars, but it's because I'm extremely partial to Depth Charge.
But Depth Charge doesn't really have a character arc. His character arc is a flat line.
Yes.
He's also the sort of revenge quest,
Exactly.
like Omega
That is exactly why I was so partial to him.
I'm surprised you did say like Megatron from Transformers 1.
It's tough. That's a really good one.
That is a good one. But no, I totally understand the Dinobot. Also, I might have blamed you for recency bias if you picked TF1.
Exactly. But again, it's such a testament to how good these characters are, is that there's such a wide range of character arcs that, like, it's really cool that there is one that sticks out above all of them, but that's also a subjective one. It's a very popular one, but it is subjective. Like,
you're not quite original.
No, but not at all. But the popular ones are popular for a reason, and I think Dinobot endures for very specific reasons. So, yeah.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up.
With our other cliffhanger question as well.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you got to ask me a question.
Trying to weasel out of it, man. I see what you're doing.
I almost got away.
Almost got away. But what I want to ask
he hunted me down like I was a Constructicon and he was Omega.
I was hunting you down like Depth Charge hunted down Rampage.
There you go.
But I'm going to grip you by the throat and pin you to the wall and ask you, what is a video game that you would like Transformers to explore in the future? What kind of video game do you think that they haven't really done that you would like to see?
Oh, man. I'll have to think about that one.
Yeah. We'll give you a long time to think about it because...
have to do some game design.
Yeah.
I've already done so many games.
Doesn't have to be specific. It could just be like, this is the type of genre of game that I'd like to see, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what kind of game would you like to see that you think would suit Transformers well?
I see. That would play to the themes of, yeah. All right. And with that, thank you all so much for joining us and listening to our ramblings. Next time we will be discussing Sea Change, Triple Takeover, Prime Target, and Autobot.
Yes! These are pretty good. At the time of this recording, these Transformers episodes are available on the Hasbro Pulse YouTube channel, as well as on DVD, and several other streaming services such as Tubi and Pluto. And by the way, as always, we are not sponsored, nor have we been sponsored by any of these things up to this point. We just want to make sure that you know how to watch these delightful shows and follow along with us.
Our podcast is currently available on YouTube and Spotify. If you liked it, give us a sub or follow and like and tell your friends about it.
Yes, like the show, and then also press the button to like the show.
Oh no, we did the generic thing of begging for...
Smash that subscribe button and kill that like button.
Well, until next time.
Indeed. We will see you in the next one.
Brrr, bum, ba, bum, ba, bum.